this will basically be the purpose of this. I've done this a couple times now for everybody watching. A handful of people are familiar with it from the past ones I did. But what I like to do is after tier, I sort of got in the habit of going through clear VODs and sort of breaking down the fight and analyzing it basically from the vantage point of somebody who knows what's the reason for like a person's moving there or a person's moving there. Because those are some of the stuff that like the average viewer won't be able to pick up on if they're just watching a clear vid, but they haven't actually been inside doing the fight themselves. So my hope is that by watching this, somebody who hasn't done the fight will be able to understand it enough to be able to appreciate the fight more. That's the goal. Because a lot of times some of the nuances in a fight go somewhat unappreciated or underappreciated because they get lost in just a clear VOD with no context or background about it. So what I want to start off by doing is and this is I've prefaced it many times already going into this, but this is going to be a very live and unedited overview here, and what I'll probably do is we'll go through the VOD in its entirety, and then we'll go back to the beginning, and we'll start breaking it down piece by piece. And I'll pause. I'll be pausing a lot as we go along. And what I think I'll try to interact with the chat in terms of any questions you guys have, specific questions. If I was a better streamer, I would be having somebody take questions for me, but I don't want to ask somebody to do that right now. So I'll just try to catch any questions, and in between phases, if you guys have questions about the phase that we just like went over or something, that would be the great time to sort of bring them up. This will be a streamed commentary and discussion about this, so you guys don't have to. I'm not here presenting like something specifically for YouTube. It's not just a YouTube presentation. So I'll put it on YouTube, but it's not just specifically for YouTube. So I don't. We can go back and forth about this. So yeah, we're just gonna get started. I'm gonna play through this in its entirety. It's gonna be a little over 18 and a half to 19 minutes of a video. So it's gonna be a bit of a long one, but I think it's important that we watch it through in its entirety before we actually start to break stuff down. So here we go. I guess the only thing that like rubs me the wrong way is when I'm setting up 3-to-1s and people are still doing 3-to-2s for no reason, or 2-to-1s, and then dying for it.
Twister.
Taking the hard part out of it for you.
If you have trouble with Exa,
Just come to the tank, please.
just come into the tank. I'm gonna start doing it too, because there's really there's no reason not to. It just removes any variable.
Wow.
Waiting.
If I see anything important as we're going through it, I'll highlight it so that we can remember to revisit it later.
Twister.
I'm not in there, sorry.
Wow.
Wow.
I was looking at a spreadsheet. So at this point, we're finishing up Titania, and we're going to be starting the what is essentially the second phase of the fight. And you guys will see, like, as you're watching, basically starting now, the pacing of the fight start to pick up. It really shows itself right here.
Watch Thunder.
Dynamo chariot.
Wait, what?
Dynamo into Chariot. Get back to 1 and then get out. Out. Pull back in. Get hit by this fire. Dodge the white and cleanse if you need to. Clown on Layla. Next fire is out. Watch Thunder.
Beam chariot.
Beam into Chariot. Stack with the main tank and then get out. Out. Next fire is gonna be in. Fold, you need to watch the debuff.
The person making the calls here is Nepu.
Fire on the main tank.
Because I'm tanking the boss and also focused on marking dive bombs,
Clown on Layla. Rhodium positions.
we had him do most of the calls for Nail.
Chariot.
Chariot. He's gonna jump and then we get out. Out. Fire out. Watch Thunder. Dodge the white and cleanse your dunes. Look for dive bomb markers.
So the
Raven's Beacon on Layla.
operation marking the dive bombs isn't very difficult, and I'll definitely outline it when we get there.
Sonic.
Premionic Beam. Everyone in the middle.
Dive. Bomb.
Stack middle.
Chariot.
Rhodium Chariot. Get a little spread and then get out. Out.
It obeys most of the same rules from turn 9 Savage, yes. So, we finished up Nail, and we're now going to be phasing into what I deem the beginning of the fight. And it opens with quite a bang. Developing first solo. So here, what you guys should be essentially watching is not necessarily what Bahamut is doing right now, but the sequence of dances that he's going to force us to go through here. We have 5 trios and then a finishing octet.
Imp. I have the party.
This is
I got him.
Not well.
behind one over here. Get over here.
Maybe sucks.
One left. This is the second of 5 trios. Fade. Fade. In. 2. 3. 4. Just a miserable configuration for me.
There in a little bit.
I really didn't want to risk it. The DPS check here is not that difficult, so I was okay with losing uptime.
I'll be okay. Ish.
Look at that LB.
Never been finer, dude.
That's a great LB, dude. That's some top quality ravioli.
How'd you decide who went to which tower? We'll definitely get into that
Yeah,
when I break it down.
Tethered versus then jump
Five.
dynamo.
Dynamo. In that blue shit.
Dangerous.
I wish that in my VOD I had the fights BGM playing, but mid dive. I really wanted to just chill.
I'm lagging. Good luck.
Orient,
Fun enough.
fine right now. You look fine right now.
Dude.
Just focus.
Oh, Arya!
It's fine. Just
I got him up, don't worry.
1,
We need to save this.
3. Do not second
Oh,
spiral. No.
am I alive?
Now all in, all in.
Get in. In.
Oh, I'm
Barely
losing this
overkill
lead.
pulled there.
Yeah.
Barely. Just keep it going.
I go fault.
I have Arya.
I'm percent to go, still fine.
Wipe off.
Carbon.
Yeah,
You're
buddy.
fine. You'll be fine. Just get up as soon as you can.
I'm going far.
Yeah, yeah.
Helping
go.
side.
Side, go the other way. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Helping
side.
fold.
That was almost a disaster.
Good call.
2 people moved instead of only 1.
Stay there, safe.
Have you 7% here?
Yeah. I'm gonna check here.
Let me hit.
We're not out. See ya.
I know. We need actually LB too. We want to see
Play
more of
dance
this.
it. Play dance it. What you guys are seeing here, by the way, is definitely not a standard set of trios. We'll make it.
There we go.
What? Jesus
Okay,
Christ.
focus, please.
Oh my spaghetti.
It's
Nail.
counterclockwise.
Watch snail.
2, 3, 4, 5. Bahamut, it's gonna be a long wait. We're gonna wait for the 3rd dive here. I'm twin. Give, I don't need anything. I don't need anything. Come into the towers.
Lagging still. Help.
Alright.
Alright, Right. a lot of damage here, boys.
So
That was all 5 trios and the octet.
Doo-doo-doo.
We're entering the second to
Oh,
last
we're gonna
phase
get an
now.
LB2
to push. It's gonna be an LB2 to push.
Can do it, just no spaghetti.
We can do it, yeah.
Waiting.
So at this point, we're feeling very pressed for damage because we know that we're down on LB compared to what we should have. Chariot, get out. It's a beam after this chariot. Start looking at A. Get to A. Dive is afterwards. Spread out. After this dive is Twister. Twister.
Twister.
We have Mega Flare coming. Watch your feet. Tank swaps. Boats.
Fading.
Man, watching this through, this is gonna be a long VOD, guys. Mr. Hatch is coming.
I got back.
There is gonna be so much to talk about. Twister. We have a dynamo coming.
Dynamo
Get in.
diving.
After this dynamo is dive, we'll be spreading out. Spread out. After this is beam. Start looking at A. A. After this is Twister.
Twister.
Twister. It's close. I should have been Defiance there. Watch your feet.
Tank.
I don't like taking beams in Deliverance during this phase. I don't think it's wise.
This is gonna hurt on that.
Or at least
anyhow.
naked Deliverance.
Okay.
Vote. Play this
Go
fine.
for it.
Got nail, guys. It's good, it's good.
Get more.
Go for it.
Get more into it.
We
Get
need
more
more.
into it.
We need more.
We need more in both. It's only gonna be
Yeah, it's
LB1.
LB1.
Just
Okay.
AoE, AoE.
LB.
Okay,
no,
I'll
it's
be.
good.
Build, build.
Go now.
These two bosses need to die at the same time,
Oh,
yes.
shit.
Okay, focus.
Oh,
you guys are
Focus up.
gods.
Focus. They start channeling abilities if the other one dies. Let's go. Alright, so we're entering the big phase now.
Remember, if you are not sure on Exaflare, just follow Layla. Trust me. Trust him. Trust me to trust him.
I don't know. It
Believe
sounds
in
like
the
a
me
long
that believes
chain
in
of
you.
trust.
There's a grace period of about 5-ish seconds, 4 to 5 seconds,
Oh, you like it?
3 to 5, something like that.
Huh?
I don't want to know.
Oh,
Lie
I
to
know.
me. Lie to me. I don't want to hear it.
But I'm liking it.
What? I'm lagging too, dude.
No, you're not.
Okay, me too.
Focus up. So this phase is all about rotations. CD rotations, damage rotations, and living. This is just live, live, live.
More next.
Get away from the front, dude.
The front guys. When they're done Aqu warning, we're gonna stack on them, okay?
On
CD
them.
Meyer Prezel.
On them. This is Covenant POA.
Exit laser after.
Yep.
The Dragoon's all being
Follow
for
Layla
trick
if you
attack
don't know.
purposes, yes.
Next is Addle Shake.
You were present that.
Yep.
Stack up.
There are positional requirements on
Provoking
Golden.
Provoke. You guys stay here, I'll move.
Call Litany. Next one.
If
The
you-
will be at the
yes.
80
80
seconds.
seconds.
Exaflare.
Poking.
Provoke.
Follow Layla if you don't know.
So Exaflares are the big
Yeah,
mechanic
EV
here
Troubadour deploy.
of this phase.
EV Troubadour deploy.
1 CDs. You have to get through 4 of them.
Trick coming up
30
next.
seconds.
Meyer Prezel. So we're through 3 at this point. Akmor, get away from me. Apoc
Call
Nepo.
Litany.
Up.
Whenever.
No, no, no.
At
40
30
seconds. At the
40
end.
seconds.
At the end.
Go.
Once we finish this final Exaflare, we will pop our CDs. We will run it. Just play this
Okay.
Exaflare.
Okay, okay.
Follow Layla if you don't know. Boss CD, no.
Pop.
Now.
Shit, pop.
CD throw.
Everything
Oh,
here?
yeah.
Everything? In tight, guys.
everything
In
here?
tight, guys. This is about to get really loud, guys. Come on, play dance. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. I'm gonna turn
Burn
down
everything,
a
let's
little
go!
bit. Spread out. Everyone spread out. Everyone spread out. Spread out. Let's go. Let's go, baby. Let's fucking go. I mean, I had to put that in there, but okay. That's the fight in its entirety. Fucking yes! That's a very happy nerd.
Holy shit, dude! Hell yeah.
Okay, so
I'm fucking serious, dude.
while we were going through that, I saw good questions in chat. Should not have existed. Yeah, that poll honestly should not have existed. We had so many like things go wrong in the earlier stages that I don't know. We somehow kept it afloat. Okay, so that's the fight. Obviously, a really long fight. This is the longest fight that Final Fantasy has had so far. I believe our kill time was like somewhere around 18 minutes and 12 seconds, something like that. The previously longest fight before that. Oh god, how long was Manipulator? I want to say it was the original Bahamut, which was 14 minutes and 5 seconds. I can't remember how long Manipulator was. I want to say Manipulator was only about a little over 13 minutes. I feel like Bahamut Prime was longer than Manipulator, but it's been many, many years. So, what I'm going to do now, and what I think I want to do is I want to put some music on behind this. You guys can tell me if this is too loud. Hopefully this is fine. I don't want it to be like so loud that it's going to overpower the video, but I also want it to at least be audible a little bit. So what we'll do now is we'll start breaking down stuff. Some of the simpler mechanics I'm probably not going to spend as much time on. I think probably the majority of this video is going to be spent on the Bahamut phase, the Terraflare phase, and the Golden phase. Twin and Nail we're definitely going to touch on, but they've been beat to death by every streamer out there, and most of the mechanics are very public, but I'll at least highlight like what's happening with those mechanics for our group. So let's get into it. I'm going to turn this VOD down. So somebody was asking earlier why we have our Paladin pull. The easiest answer I can give you is only because our very first pull of Twintania, we were playing very safe. We just pulled in full tank stances, shield oath Paladin, have him pull the boss, and yeah. And because Twintania is such a pushover, we saw no reason to change that. Keep everything consistent as to how we originally learned it, and yeah, we don't need to optimize Twintania, so to speak. If we were wanting to do this optimally, I would be pulling as a warrior for certain. So Twintania is going to have a lot of the mechanics that you guys are familiar with from the old Twintania. Notably, you guys initially, let me full screen it. I don't know why I didn't have it full screen. The first thing she's going to do right out of the gate is plummet into Twister, which is like just a throwback to turn 5. The Twister mechanic behaves basically the same way as it always has, except that it actually works this time. Haha. So the nice thing, or the fun part about Twintania Ultimate is what they've done is they've basically combined, at least the initial part of Twintania basically combines the Twister Fireball stacks into a consecutive mechanics. And what that forces you to do is it's a very simple spread, then stack. The Fireball does not so much damage you need everyone, but you at least want 6 players in there, I would say. You can live it with 5 if you have a ton of MIT, but why bother unless you're trying to force LB. 6 to 7 players in there is fine. You don't need 8. 8's just, it's nice if you can. So, right after that, we're going to go into the first Tank Buster, and what's different about these death sentences in Ultimate, and everyone knew this going in because of the preview videos, but one of the key differences here is that the death sentences apply slashing resist. So obviously every death sentence needs to be tank swapped. So very simple. We're going to see the classic set of mechanics Liquid Hells and Hatches pretty soon. We have another Twister and Fireball combo. And this is our first Neuralink drop. So just like the old Titania, we're going to have 3 Neuralink drops. And you can guess that where we place them is very important. And now we have these markers down for a reason. These markers are basically indicating where we're going to place our Neuralinks because it's going to come up much later in the video, the importance of these. But yeah, if you're going in doing this for your first time, just be aware that your Neuralink placement does very much matter. So we're starting the second part of Titania now, and we're going to see a bit more of the classic Titania mechanics. We're going to start seeing some Liquid Hells, which basically target players who are at a certain range threshold. It's kind of like you could think of it like a donut, like you can't be too far, but you can't be too close. And anyone in that threshold is going to be targeted by the Liquid Hells. So we have more death sentences in this phase, more tank swaps, but we also have the Hatch mechanic happening now that there's a Neuralink down. Now if you remember Hatch from the original turn 5, all the requirement of Hatch is to be standing in a Neuralink when you take the damage. The difference here is that you can't do the old turn 5 cheese of just having your paladin stand inside a hatch, or stand inside a Neuralink and take every hatch, because it applies a debuff on you. I think it's called Mana Vulnerability, that allows you to not take more than 2 hatches while you have the debuff, or more than 1 hatch while you have the debuff, rather. So they got us there. Can't cheese this one. 2 Neuralinks are down. Moving on to the 3rd Neuralink. Nothing super special going on now, except that it's basically going to combine the 2 sets of mechanics that we've just dealt with. We're going to have Liquid Hells, Twisters, and Fireballs, and Hatches all happening basically around the same time. Most of it's pretty self-explanatory. Be spread out for Twisters. Don't twister your friends. Nobody likes that. Tank swap whenever necessary. And stack for Fireballs. I think the only thing that you really need to worry about managing in this phase is the Liquid Hells and making sure that you have a sort of a priority system for the hatches. The one thing I didn't mention is that at this point, because there's 2 Neuralinks, every generate that she casts is now spawning 2 hatch orbs. And it's going to be on 2 players. It's always going to be targeting your DPS. Let me turn this down a little bit. It's like really overpowering my brain. So the hatches are always going to target DPS players. So, you know, if it's on both your melee should have like a little bit of priority system. Like if it's on me and it's on you, I'll always go left, you always go right, stuff like that. If it's on a melee and a range, have the range always go here, the melee always get there. Just make it very simple, like easy to remember priority system for your DPS. Like I mentioned, we have all the mechanics that we've seen thus far. We have the Fireball stack with the Twisters, with the Liquid Hells. Don't Liquid Hell over a Neuralink. That's the only thing you really have to worry about. If you stand in the Liquid Hell fires, like 2 seconds after they appear, you get a burn, which is an auto death. This boss here basically has for all intents and purposes, a 3-minute and 5-second rage, typically. Fairly easy check to make. You can make it without CDs. You know, use CDs in your opener, but you really don't need to use CDs after that. Because you want to be preparing for the next part of the fight, which is what we're about to start here. Immediately after Titania dies, we're going to be starting the nail phase of the fight, and we're going to be seeing a ton of classic mechanics return, and also some new ways that they present themselves, and it'll be really fun to go over. But right out of the gate, Nail lets you know that he's here. Excuse me. Opens right where the Heavens Fall. If that didn't kill every single group that just killed Twin, I don't know. I'd like to meet the group that didn't just die to that Heavens Fall as soon as Twin died. So, Nail is now down. Comes down really strong with a Dalaman dive. And immediately after this Dalaman dive, Nail goes full ultimate on you and just starts chucking Tank Busters into you, chucking Raven's Claws into you. No rest, which is going to be a big theme of this fight. No breaks. So the way we got through that, just what you can howl it, you can pop a CD, you can do whatever you want. We felt cover was the easiest solution. We hadn't used cover up to this point, so why not just cover it? Okay, so we've just had Nail start her phase, and what you guys will notice around the map right now, if I can give you a better angle, my camera's not tilting up. All right, well, if you guys can see in the VOD, there are now dragons that I'm sure everybody remembers if they've done turn 9. There are a bunch of dragons that spawned around the map. However, we have 2 new faces. We have the fire, ice, and lightning dragons making a return. However, we also have dark and holy dragons making an appearance. And they're going to add 2 new mechanics to the fight that aren't new enough. They're new, but at the same time, they're also kind of just reworked versions of mechanics that existed in the old turn 9. So you'll see what I mean when we actually see what the dark and the holy dragons are actually doing. But they don't behave very differently than some of the mechanics in the original turn 9. The fire, ice, and lightning dragons do the same thing they always did. You have the thunderstrucks, you have the fire scorches, and you have the ice bitons. So the one thing that we haven't gotten into, I'm gonna rewind a little bit before it gets too far, is because there are 5 dragons are in the map. The first question you have is like, okay, well, what are these 5 dragons are obviously going to be dive bombing at some point. How are they going to be dive bombing? And the way that you'll see the phase play out is, I think in the original turn 9, you had the first 2 dragons dive at the same time, and then you had the 3rd dragon dive by himself. These 5 dragons dive in a 2-1-2 order. And it's going to obey the same rule as the original turn 9, where it's going to start at 12 o'clock, and going clockwise from 12 o'clock, the order of the dragons that you come across is going to be the order in which they dive. So the first 2 dragons you come across from 12 are going to be the first pair of 2 to dive, and then the 3rd will be the second set of dives, the second single dive, I should say, and then the last 2 will be the final pair of dives. And what I'm going to be doing here, because I'm the dive bomb marker for our team, is basically just using that same logic from turn 9 and marking safe spots for three different safe spots for people who are targeted by the dive bomb markers later. So that's all handled, and it's very easy to handle in the opening 30 seconds of the phase, 20 seconds of the phase, because there's not a lot going on yet. You kind of want to get these dive bomb markers out of the way sooner rather than later, because the longer you wait, the more stuff you're going to have to be balancing, especially if you're doing as a tank. Personally, I would recommend maybe having a range DPS or a healer do it, just because I don't know. I feel it's easier probably for that role. They have a bigger scope of the arena, but at the same time, there's not enough going on for it to be difficult for any role. So you won't be able to hear it. And you won't be able to see it, unfortunately, because I have a chat blocker, but you guys are going to... Oh, I paused at the perfect time! Oh my god. Okay. So, the new sort of interaction in this phase is what Nail is basically saying in the chat log. Because what the quotes that Nail says throughout this phase determine the pairings and order of mechanics that are going to happen, and each quote corresponds to different mechanics. There are key words in each quote that correspond to different mechanics. So this mechanic, off the top of my head, let's test myself here. Oh, Red Moon, shine the path to conquest. I'm pretty sure that's a lunar dynamo into chariot. So if you're familiar with those mechanics, you remember the lunar dynamo is a donut. You have to either be inside or outrange it, and the chariot is just to get away from the boss, otherwise it'll send you flying into a kill wall. At the same time that these mechanics are going out, you have the Thunderstrucks, as you can see on the screen. It's going to target 2 players. It's just like Turn 9 Savage, sends out 2 Thunderstrucks at the same time. And also, we have a Fireball marker that I may or may not be able to get a clip of. Yeah, I should be able to. We have the Fire Dragon sending a Fire Scorch marker on a player that we're all going to want to get hit by to clear our Ice Bitten marks. It's all behaving very similar to the original Turn 9. You die if you get double Ice Bitten. That's the takeaway here. So we want to use the Fire Scorches to get double Ice Bitten, but you can also die when you get double Fire Scorched, so you need to take that into consideration as well. There's a very easy way to do this if you're just wanting to make an all-encompassing solution of like the original Turn 9, you had Fire in, Fire out, Fire in, Fire out. You could essentially do the same thing here. The key here is that by the end of the phase, you need to have gotten hit by 2 fires. You can either take the first 2, or you can take the first and the third. You can't take the first and the fourth, obviously you'll die. The ice spins come out at a pace to where you just need to take either the first and the second or the first and the third. So the movement here, and this is a good time to pause because we haven't got to talk about what the two new dragons are doing. I talked earlier about how we had the Holy Dragon and the Darkness Dragon, and I sort of referenced that they behave similarly to some mechanics from the original Turn 9. And the mechanics that I'm referring to are the Garrote Twists from the original Turn 9. What you're going to see here is the Dark Dragon has cast Dooms on players in your party. At the moment, it's only 2. Eventually, it's going to be 3. But what these Dooms do is they're exactly what you think. They put a debuff timer on you, and as it ticks down, when it reaches 0, you die. So you obviously need to get these Dooms off you, and the way you do that is the Holy Dragon spawns little circles on the map that you need to wait for them to explode, and when they explode, they leave behind a little white swirly. And let me see if I can get a better angle on it. Try to get a good pause here. Okay, there we go. So you can see this white swirly over here. This is basically the swirlies from the original Turn 9 that cleansed your Garrote Twist. You can just think of it as you're cleansing your twist. What you're going to do is the Doom players are going to need to take these white swirlies. And the thing about the Dooms is the Dooms that are sent out, they have different durations. One player will get targeted by like a 6-second duration Doom. Another player will get targeted by a 10 or 11-second duration, I can't remember. And then when we get 3 Dooms, the third player will be targeted by a 16-second duration Doom. And as you can see, the Holy Dragon is spawning white swirlies at different pacings. So obviously you're going to have the short duration Doom take the first swirly, the mid duration Doom take the second, and then when you get a long duration Doom, they'll eventually take the third. So that's the interaction that's happening there, and that's going to be repeating a number of times throughout the phase. I think 4 off the top of my head. We have another quote. Man, I'm getting good at pausing these quotes. So we have another set of nail mechanic here. Blazing Path lead me to Conquest. I believe this corresponds to Thermionic Beam into Chariot. We'll see if I'm right. So we have the 2 Thunders run out, then you stack for a Beam. Thermionic Beam is just like the original. You need to split it you need to soak the damage together as a team. And then you're going to want to move out immediately for Chariot. Damn, 2 for 2, guys. Who needs ACT? Again, we have Holy and Darkness Dragon mechanics. We have more Ice Bittens. We're going to have a Fire Tether coming here. We want this one in. I believe this is the 3rd fire. We always try to put the 3rd fire in. It's very important, by the way, that if you get targeted by a Fire Tether, that you don't take the next fire. If you're doing it the way we're doing it, the person targeted by the previous tether can't take the next one. Otherwise, they'll get double scorched and die. Yes, Nail is a girl, by the way. I don't know if I'm calling it a guy. I don't know why I did that. So at this point, we're going to have another set of nail mechanics. I missed the quote, but you can kind of see the theme here. You have a quote, corresponds to 2 mechanics. This one's going to be a Raven's Dive in what looks like a chariot because we're all spreading out. Raven's Dive, what it does is it'll jump to a player, and anyone around that player, if you're too close to that player, they'll get hit and get sent flying into the kill wall. So you really want to, every time you're dealing with a Raven's Dive mechanic, you're going to see us spreading out. And I want you guys to look for that when we're talking about phases later in the fight, because that'll be important. They'll be very important then, especially when we get to the Terror Flare phase. But that's all the mechanics of this phase. There's only one mechanic remaining, and it's going to be the Raven's Beak mechanic, and all it is just a tank swap. It'll put a vulnerability on you that forces a tank swap. Can't have a phase without a forced tank swap. The one thing that we haven't got to see it, so here's the Raven's Beak. Shortly after this Raven's Beak, we're going to see the dive bombs go out. We're well prepared for the dive bombs. They've all been marked for a long time now. The thing about the dive bombs is, while these dive bombs are going out, she's doing another RP quote, and we're going to have another set of nail mechanics to deal with. And this one is this is a beam into Raven's Dive, I believe. The Hypernovas you just need to bait, not stand in, because it'll give you a bleed. Raven's Dive into beam, sorry. So at this point, all the dive bombs are out, and outside of a few more nail one-liners, the phase is pretty much complete. We're just going to be trying to, right now at this point in time, we're thinking about Bahamut. We're trying not to overextend on nail. There's no reason to overextend on nail. Once you know that she's dead, just start pooling resources. So nail's dead. We're going to put the boss back on me here now that my debuff's gone. And we're now beginning, like I alluded to earlier, we're beginning what I feel is the true beginning of the fight. This fight is called Unending Coil of Bahamut, but in my opinion, this fight is really Ultimate Bahamut. And Ultimate Bahamut phase opens up with quite the mechanic. I don't know if you guys have ever been hit by a 7th Umbral Era, but it hits hard. Throw a tank LB at this, get through it. Does a lot of damage there at the end. Calamitous, please. And now we're starting the real fight. We're gonna see the timeless classics right here: the Flare Breath into Flatten combo, the Bahamut Classic. And what you guys are gonna see, what we watched it when we were going through the full VOD earlier. What you guys are gonna see is we're gonna go through a gauntlet of sort of what feel like intermission dance phases, and they're all gonna have their own unique twist and their own unique strategy for getting through it. Sometimes Bahamut is going to be targetable for longer periods of time than others, and other times are just purely about surviving and solving the mechanics. So the first of these 5 trios, she's going to do 5 trios. And they're called trios obviously because, as you can see, we have our homies Nail and Twin accompanying our dragon god friend Bahamut. And they're going to cause us some headaches because they're all working together now, and that means they're all going to be using their mechanics together. So the first trio here is going to be the Quick March trio, and this is the one that was kind of previewed when they were demoing Ultimate. So people kind of got a taste of what to expect, but they didn't get the full picture until we actually died to it once. So what they're going to do is you're going to have the three bosses spawn on the edge of the arena in a random one of 8 different spots, and these 3 bosses are going to dive across the arena in a straight line. So your first instinct is obviously going to be split the raid half and half, but 4 on one side, 4 on the left to dodge the dives that are going to come. But Square Enix, and specifically Pseudo, being the madmen that they are, feel that this obviously isn't enough. This is not anything ultimate. We need something a little bit more challenging than dodging a simple dive bomb. So they've introduced what will be a very reoccurring mechanic of the Twister dive. And while you're dodging this dive bomb, you need to also be dropping your Twister behind. And that, I think this is, I joked about this earlier, but this is truly the mechanic that says Welcome to Ultimate. So at this point we have a bunch of Mega Flare pepperonis that need to be baited away from people and they're not stacked on areas that you need to be. We have the Mega Flare cleaves coming down. You don't want to kill people by cleaving each other. And then we also have a set of 4 Mega Flare stack markers that you'll see back here on the four of the DPS players. Now, I don't know if you guys can see it at this pause, but shortly after those Mega Flare stack markers are done, we have a set of 3 Earthshakers and 2 Tempest Wings. If you remember Tempest Wing from the original Turn 13, it's basically the tether that was put onto the tanks that was a large hit to the tanks and also was a big twister on you that knocked anyone around you back. And this basically knocked you into the kill wall. So same mechanic here, except we're now interacting with Earthshakers, and these Earthshakers behave a bit differently than the original Earthshakers from Turn 13. And you'll see in a second what I mean. Let me show what happens when you get hit. When you get hit by these Earthshakers, you get an Earth resistance down. And what this basically says is that you can't get hit. This Earth resistance down, unless you're a tank, basically will kill you if you get hit by an Earthshaker when you have this debuff. If you're a tank, you can have a tank privilege and actually live it if you have a CD, but don't make a strategy that accounts for that. There's no reason to. Because the damage on a tank is so minimal from getting hit by a regular Earthshaker, as you guys can see, it's an absolute joke. As far as positioning goes, to sort of spread out these Earthshakers and to not cleave people and to not hit people who have debuffs from the Earthshaker, the way that we like to do it is we had the Earthshakers at west, east, and north, and then we put the Mega Flare stack to the south, if you consider clock positions. And as far as the Tempest Wings positionings, we experimented with a lot of stuff with like putting the Tempest Wings in between the Shakers so they don't get hit at all. But then we realized, what's the point? The Shaker does like no damage to tanks. Let's just put the Tempest Wing tanks inside the Healer Earthshakers. So we put one of the Healer Shakers on the left, the other Healer Shaker on the right, and then the random DPS player who gets targeted by the third Shaker, we put him to the north, and we leave him to his own devices. If we do this properly, and you'll see that we kind of don't do it properly here, and unfortunately, what I should preface before going forward, there's going to be a lot of mistakes in this pull leading up to the final phase. And it's a miracle that this pull actually ended up being a kill because of all the mistakes that we actually make. And you'll see the first mistake happen here. What should happen here is that because the Tempest Wings are on the left and the right of the boss, it should give safe zones for the north and the south of the boss, the front and the back of the boss, for the melee to keep uptime. And you'll see Chia, our Dragoon, on the right side of the screen here, coming in from his Shaker. He should be able to get globals in the boss here, but I think he comes a little too close to Nepu's, or Nepu was a little bit close. It looks like Nepu was a little bit too close to him. Yeah, a little bit too inside the boss there, so clip the Dragoon there and send him flying. But you can kind of see how it should play out here. It's really easy to get your melee uptime here, so you should really try to. Uptime on this boss is important. It's not a super tight DPS check and requirement until later, but it is important. You don't want to be just throwing DPS away for no reason. Immediately out of that Tempest Wing, we have a Flare Breath that yours truly did not mitigate properly at all because I was eyeballing our Dragoon being sent into the wall. As a tank here, I can just tell you that you want to be prepared for this Flare Breath flatten. I like to have something rolling from the Tempest Wing into the Flare Breath. Typically, you can see I misplayed my Vengeance a little bit here. Typically, I need this Vengeance cooldown to be up right now, so I need to have used it a little bit sooner in the Nail phase previously. Because what I like to do is I like to Vengeance the Tempest Wing into the Flare Breath here, but I didn't have it available, so I opted for a Panic Inner Beast, and yeah, it didn't quite work out for me. So right out of the Flare Breath, you want to be in a healthy enough spot to survive the follow-up flatten here, and just get as much physical mitigation as you can, and try not to get crit with a raw intuition up like I did. So we've sort of salvaged things right now. We've got things a little bit under control, and we're exiting the first trio and entering the second trio. This is the Blackfire trio, and this is the first of the trios where we really started to see strategies between teams start to deviate. You had a lot of teams that I saw on streams playing this trio in the middle. Our team personally preferred to play this trio on the side. What I'll do is I'll go through what we did and then sort of weigh the pros and the cons of doing what we did versus what other teams are doing. So the interaction of mechanics right now is they're gonna fly. The boss is gonna fly away, and they're gonna spawn around the arena in what's essentially an isosceles triangle. And you'll see Twintania over here is beginning to channel Liquid Hells, and she's gonna shoot them on our party right now. Bahamut, as you can see here, has selected a player to be targeted by a Bahamut dive. And if you remember how the Bahamut dives function from the original turn 13, the Bahamut dives are sent to a location where the marker appears. And this is a very important distinction that I probably should have highlighted earlier when we were in the Nail phase. The dive bomb markers from the 5 dragons in the Nail phase behave like the original ones, where the dives lock in at the position where the marker fades. The Bahamut and Twintania dives lock in in the position where the marker appears. And that's going to be very important knowledge going forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to bait the Bahamut dive in an area of our choosing, and we choose the edge of the arena, and we're going to move in a direction that moves away from this dive. So what I'm getting at here is facing the middle, we're going to be looking for where Bahamut spawns. If he spawns on the right, as he has here, we're going to go to the left. If he spawns on the left, we're going to go to the right. So right here I'll call it left, and we'll move as a team to the left. Very important what I just said. We're going to be moving as a team because while this is happening, we have this guy over here. You can't quite see very well on the side of the screen, but you see that little halberd there. That's our buddy Nail. Nail is going to be channeling Thermionic Beam on a player in the party, and we need to be stacked as 8 for this. Right here. So, luckily for us, the Thermionic, the time in which the the snapshot for the party happens quite early on in this liquid hell bait, so it keeps our position as 8. I think it looks like this is a 6-person stack. Okay, so we had 2 people lag behind, presumably distracted from the fact that we just recovered from a dead Dragoon. But this is the intent of our strategy here, is we want to get people moving as a unit and soaking the Thermionic as 8. So it's actually remarkable that we survived that. Yeah, that's either my bad or somebody else was lagging behind who happened to be targeted by the beam. My video, so I get to call them the problem. Okay, so going into this, I want to rewind. This is very important. Very important what just happened. So we're leaving the Thermionic beam, and what we've now seen is 4 Mega Flare towers spawn around the map. And these can spawn in 2 different arrangements. You can consider them, how should I explain it? They can spawn in sort of the 4 cardinals in like a diamond formation, or they can spawn in like a square, so it just shifts 45 degrees. And what we do is we're going to take, you'll see that in addition to 4 towers, there's also 4 Mega Flare stack markers that go out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 4 Mega Flare stack markers and place them in between the 2 nearest towers. If there's ever a tower that spawns directly in front of us, like there was here, what we do is we go directly past it and stand in between the towers. The priority system that we use here to solve this is entirely based upon the fact that this is a role-based mechanic. Much of Final Fantasy XIV is very role-based. Not everything in this fight is role-based, but much of this game is honestly role-based. So if you're a team progressing a fight, one piece of advice I can give you after many years of experience is always be looking for common patterns in roles that are targeted by mechanics, because that's definitely how you solve this mechanic very easily. What we'll do here is the roles that are assigned mechanics here is the 4 players that get Mega Flare stack markers are going to be 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 DPS players. That leaves 4 players who are not targeted by Mega Flare stacks, being 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 DPS players. 4 players not targeted, 4 towers on the map. You guys do the math, you know what needs to happen. The priority system we use here is we have the tank take the tower, the tank not targeted take the tower to the right of the Mega Flare stack, the healer not targeted take the tower to the left of the Mega Flare stack, and the 2 DPS players take the far towers. We like doing that just because if it happened to be 2 melees that are free, they can use Shikuchi and Elusive Jump to get there. There's no necessity for those. It just was nice if it could happen. As far as your 2 DPS players going where they need to go, what we like to do is we actually use the same priority we had for Hatch from the earlier Twin Phase as a priority for which DPS is going to take which tower here. So, if it was 2 melee, the melee that took the right Hatch in the Chutani phase would take the right tower here, and so on and so on. So it's very easy to make a very simple priority system here, and this is honestly what I feel probably the easiest trio. Once you have a system for it, it's definitely the easiest trio to execute by far. The only thing you have to watch out for is while you're preparing to get inside these Mega Flare towers, you can't get too hasty because Nail is going to shoot out 4 hypernovas, and those are the things you don't want to stand in or you get a bleed that kills you. You need to bait the hypernovas out of the first set of the hypernovas outside of the tower before you go into the tower. So you'll see the first hypernova land there on a player, and then the Mega Flare stack also hits, and then we're going to be sending our players inside the towers. And we get some hilarious set of hypernovas here that completely strand me like Wilson. I could have risked it and gone for it, but because the damage check is really pretty lenient in this phase, I didn't feel a need to. So I just wanted to play it safe and take the long way around to get back to Bahamut. There's a little gap there that I might have been able to squeeze through, but guys, who wants to risk that? Do you really want to be the guy that gets a bleed trying to do that? I'm not messing with that. Not today. So that's, for all intents and purposes, Blackfire Trio, and what you'll see with a lot of the trios is a lot of the trios are going to end with a Giga Flare. I said earlier that I was going to highlight what some of the other teams are doing and maybe share the pros and cons. What I see happening on some streams is another way to do Blackfire Trio, and this was actually the original way we did it, but we decided we didn't like it. and it would make. We're gonna do the patented Layla paint stream here. Let me make sure that I got this set up. So one thing that I see teams doing is they'll start in the middle. So they'll start here. Let me do this. They'll start here. Bahamut will be here. And they'll shoot the dive like this. And what they'll do is they will send the party moving this way, or just a way that's away from Bahamut, and they'll start baiting their liquid hells as they move. You don't want to move too quickly though, and this was a problem that we ran into during Prague, because if you move too quickly, you end up reaching the wall before you finish your set of liquid hells, and you create this like line of impassable fire that becomes very problematic, because as you guys remember, we have towers coming shortly after, and if you guys can just sort of imagine how this is going to play out, if you reach a wall and you're at the wall and needing to fan out for towers, you have 4 players who need to fan out for towers, you don't know who needs to go where until you've already moved off the wall. So you pretty much have the whole party like right here at this point. The player that needs to take this tower is just entirely walled off, and they need to go all the way around like this to get there, and that's just not feasible. So what the teams are doing is they're basically stutter stepping the liquid hells and baiting like 2 inside of 1 spot. It's basically what's happening. They're baiting them inside each other. So it'll leave you this this empty space here at the end, which is enough for you to make a movement that gets you to your tower quickly enough. And that's a completely fine way of doing it, and it's a method that a lot of teams enjoy doing. I do encourage anybody who's starting this phase for the first time, try the wall strat. I thought it was super easy to execute, and yeah, it's really not very volatile at all. I cannot remember. I don't think we've died to a Blackfire trio since like. I mean, I don't think we ever had a death to it in like week 2. No, that's not true. We definitely had like somebody take a bleed or something and then they miss a tower. Very rarely do we have a Blackfire trio wipe. It's definitely the least wipes from a trio for sure. So try whichever strat works for you. I like wall. Okay, let's get back to video now. So, like I said, we're going to end the phase with a Giga Flare. Now, instead of going into a Flare Breath Flatten combo, we're going to go into a set of triple Flare Breaths, and this is a lot of damage on your tank. For some reason, my mitigation, again, is poor here, which is really unfortunate, because I would have liked to outline like what good CDs are here. But typically, you can afford to be in tank stance for pretty much all of these tank busters because the DPS check here is so light. So that's why you're going to see a lot of tanks doing this fight and clearing this fight, just kind of idling in tank stance through these trios because your damage doesn't really matter. It's a lot more detrimental to your team to die to like nothing when you could have just lived by being in tank stance and still steamroll the DPS check. So I just stay Defiance a lot. I even press Unchained a few times just for shits. Yeah, definitely have a CD here. Apoc's really good here. Use whatever you want at your disposal. It's 3 Flare Breaths, and you need to mitigate it pretty well. So now that those 3 Flare Breaths are done, you're going to be entering the 3rd trio, which is Felruin Trio. And this is a trio that I think was the first sort of like pause for teams. I think the first 2 trios were simple enough for teams to get through. This is the trio that really started to make you think like, wait a second. We need to actually adjust what we're doing because Liquid's still on the map, guys. Our Neurolinks are still hanging out. They have not gone away. And there's a very clear reason for that, which you're about to see. Felruin Trio is going to start with the 3 bosses coming down in the middle of the map. And we're going to have, again, another combination of 3 bosses mechanics happening at the same time. Twintania over here is going to be channeling Etheric Profusion, which if you remember from the original turn 5 is the massive raid buster that requires you to be standing inside a Neuralink to survive. What do you know? 3 Neuralinks on the map. Well, that's nice. We have 3 to choose from. Wrong. Some people need to... some people... You can't just use 1, because for the reasons that we're about to go over. Nail, at the same time... Let me see if I can get a better pause. Let's see if I see it in my POV. Oh, you can't see it. It's behind my party frame. You guys see what this chat bubble is? You guys know what this chat bubble means, right? You guys know what it means. More nail mechanics. We have some RP mechanics here that are going to basically be bringing more nail mechanics to the fight. And this specific phase has 2 mechanics. It has Raven's Dive and it has Dynamo. And which mechanic she does first, it depends on the RP that she just did there in that quote. I personally feel that the Dynamo into Dive is the much simpler to execute of the 2. However, with the strategy that I'm about to show you, the Dive into Dynamo is also fairly straightforward as well. This is probably the trio that I feel the most comfortable with. But definitely to start with, when we were starting this trio, our Neuralinks were in a very bad position for this phase. We had, I think, our 3 Neuralinks like spread out in like a line kind of formation, and it was just not good for this because of the reason that the position that these bosses spawn in is random. They're always going to be in a triangle, but their orientation in that triangle is random. And that matters for your Neuralinks because you can either have them... They spawn in 6 different spots. So if they spawn... You see our Neuralinks are like a triangle right now. They can either spawn in between our Neuralinks or they can spawn on top of our Neuralinks, basically. So it's 2 different triangle orientations. It's very hard for me to explain that with words, but I hope that you guys can picture that in your head. So 6 different locations for the 3 bosses to spawn. That's basically what I'm getting at. Now, depending on the way the bosses spawn, your Neuralinks either help you or are a massive detriment to you. So you need a Neuralink combination that accounts for both. And what most teams, including ours, found is, if not all teams, I haven't looked at many clear VODs, actually haven't looked at any other clear VODs, period. But I would assume that most teams are using a triangle formation for Neuralinks. I believe I saw some screenshots that some people have their Neuralinks farther out. Whatever works for your team. I'm going to outline what worked for us here. So I wish that I had... it's kind of unfortunate that I don't have like a backup VOD that shows the other scenario, the other case to this phase of where she does the other mechanic first, but we'll just have to use our imagination here. So she's going to open with a mechanic, and I believe that quote is going to be the Dive into Dynamo mechanic. I think I heard that on ACT. So if you guys remember Raven's Dive from the Nail phase, what does Raven's Dive signify? It signifies that you really need to be spread out a little bit, but not spread too far. And we can't spread too far because we know that a Dynamo is going to be following afterwards. So we need to either be inside of the Dynamo or outside or outranging it. The positioning that we favored here is we spread out in a close enough position for everyone to get inside the Dynamo afterwards. And the final mechanic of this trio that we haven't discussed yet is what Bahamut's going to do. We haven't talked about Bahamut yet. Bahamut is going to send out 2 Tempest Wings on players. It's going to send it out on random players. We used to, our very first polls, we thought like, oh, maybe it's the 2 closest players to Bahamut. Maybe it's always the 2 tanks. You know, there are a lot of things we tried, but to our knowledge, it's just completely random who it targets. And you guys can kind of see where this phase is starting to go. 2 Tempest Wings, Aetheric Perfusion Channeling, Nail Mechanics. We need to get the Tempest Wings on the tanks. We can't have the Tempest Wings cleaving each other or the party. 3 Neuralinks. 1 Tempest Wing and 1 Neuralink, another Tempest Wing and another Neuralink, the remaining 6 party members in the final Neuralink. And you need to do this in a movement that satisfies the conditions that Nail gives you. And what we do here for the Dive into Dynamo is the tethers go out. Nepo and I, my co-tank, we have a priority for how we grab tethers. I will always favor the Nail side tethers. He will always favor the Twintanya side tethers. I will always go to the Nail side Neuralink. He will always go to the Twintanya side Neuralink. And that's just how we did it. And the lost my train of thought. The Tempest Wings that are going out right now need to be picked up fairly quickly because of the pacing of events that's going to happen here, the sequence of events that's going to happen. It's going to be very quick. Dive into get in, into grab your tethers. Don't get cleaved by the dynamo. You don't want to die. And then immediately move out because Etheric Perfusion is about to finish channeling and get to your Nurlings. We've got the Tempest Wings. Everybody's safe here. Nobody's getting cleaved. We're all safe from Etheric Perfusion. But we're not done yet. I tricked you. There's another mechanic. Directly after this is one more nail mechanic. This is a set of 3 nail mechanics. Haha. Now we have 3. Always following the Raven's Dive Dynamo combo or Dynamo Raven's Dive combo is a set of Meteor Streams. Meteor Streams means spread out. So we need to now get the fuck out of our Nurlings and spread out for Nurlings. Or spread out from Meteor Stream. Kaboom! There goes all the Meteor Streams. So it's a very fast-paced movement. And as you can see, teams that have like really awkward Nurlings are going to have a lot of trouble with this set of mechanics because you need to be out in very quickly. Let me just highlight what would happen if we got the Dynamo first into dive, which I don't have here. I always hate this part of the opera because it's like, I always feel like it's overpowering my voice. If we had gotten Dynamo first, what Nepo and I would have done as tanks, because the way the Tempest Wing works, the Tempest Wing comes out right before the second mechanic. So if she did Dynamo first, the Tempest Wings wouldn't be out yet. So what Nepo and I do if she gets Dynamo first is he and I both sprint to the wall, and we as tanks will outrange it. Because what will happen is it becomes very easy for us to get... We're going to go to the... Okay, let me clarify. We're going to outrange the Dynamo near Bahamut. That's what I should specify. We'll outrange the Dynamo near Bahamut because what it allows us to do is we will move in as soon as the Dynamo goes out. We'll be very close to Bahamut, and we can grab the tethers right from Bahamut as opposed to grabbing them from the party kind of spread out, and it might be difficult to pick them up. So if you get Dynamo, if you're using our Nurlings and you get Dynamo first, I would recommend sending your tanks toward Bahamut and just outranging the Dynamo and waiting for the tethers to come out and then grabbing the tethers and spreading out for the Raven's Dive. And the nice thing is while you're spreading out for the Raven's Dive, you can be moving to your Nurling with the Tempest Wing you just picked up. So it's a very convenient way to solve it. I feel that the Dynamo first is the easier of the two, but they're both pretty easy. So directly after those Meteor Streams, we go into Giga Flare. A lot of these phases end in Giga Flare. A lot of damage. Just mitigate. And we're going to go into a combination of Flare Breath Flattens. Need good mitigation here. One thing that we like to do is we like to use the Fel Rune Trio as a signal that we want to use our LB. In order to make the DPS check easily, you can throw an LB and you can completely afford to because you'll rebuild it by the time you need it later. So throw out an LB whenever you think. I think the latest you can throw out an LB without impacting Terror Flare phase too much is, I believe, directly after the Heavens Fall Trio. I think you can reliably build LB3 as long as you LB right after the Heavens Fall Trio. I wouldn't do it much farther than that. But as you can see, as you'll later see in this VOD, we disobey that and things get a little dicey. We'll talk about that when we get there. Yeah, we have an Unchained on the screen right now. This is the most I've ever pressed Unchained in Stormblood. I really didn't give a shit about my damage, but I figured why not, it'll help. I probably should have cared a little bit more about my damage considering the spaghetti that's about to ensue. We're going to have some deaths coming up here that in hindsight I would have liked to have been doing a bit more damage to make this a little bit less hectic. So let's continue. Just mitigate these Flare Breath Flattens. They're very scripted, very simple. Now, we're starting the fourth trio, Heaven's Fall Trio, and this is the one that became the most popular very quickly for streamers. And I'm going to betray my team and bear it all here for how to solve this trio very easily. Full disclosure, because it is actually very easy. So what's going to happen here is the 3 bosses are going to jump away, and they're going to spawn in a range. They're all going to be adjacent to each other, but how should I explain it? The ordering of them is random. You know, you can have Nail Twin Bahamut, you can have Bahamut Twin Nail, you can have Bahamut Nail Twin, and that ordering actually does matter And it's unfortunate that I don't have, again, a backup VOD to show you different ordering, because it does kind of change how we as a team chose to dodge it. But just imagine in your head what's going to happen here. So you have the 3 bosses on the edge of the map. Oh, perfect! No, this is actually good. I didn't see Bahamut over there. So this is the Bahamut Nail twin configuration. This is the one that I really wanted to show. Let's pretend, imagine in your head right now. Let me first explain what will happen. Bahamut and Twin, as you can see right here, it's kind of hard to see. Just unpause it. We have a Bahamut marker and we have a Tutani marker. Those 2 dive bomb markers, as you recall, the dives get locked into position where the markers appear. So we're going to bait them in the middle, and the direction we move from middle depends upon the orientation that these 3 bosses spawned in. If you have an orientation where you have Bahamut and Tutani next to each other, they're going to dive and create a very wide safe zone on the sides of the map. You can just picture that in your head. Let's go back to paint real quick. That's the best way to do this, right? I don't want to save that. Let's make a new one. Don't save. So imagine they're going like this, and they're going like this. Ton of white space over here. All this green stuff, this is all your safe angle. Very easy to fit everybody in here. Ton of safe zone there. So this angle is very similar to, you guys remember the quick march trio, where you go 4 to the right, 4 to the left, and we use that same strategy here. Where it becomes a little bit less safe is when you have like this, where they're going like this. So as you can see, the safe zone space is a little bit more limited here. I feel that it is possible to fit 4 players in here, but it's a little bit tighter than like necessary. So what we opted to do here is we'll just send. Why am I using green again? We'll send 2 players here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to send our 2 tanks north, and then we'll send our 2 range south. And this gave everybody like a lot of room to dodge the dives and also dodge the follow-up twister mechanic. So just like every twister dive ends with a twister. So leaves behind twisters. And now we get to the part where teams started to get like a little bit walled. But really, guys, this is a very simple to execute mechanic. What I want you guys to watch here. So, what's the one thing that in all of this? By the way, these towers can spawn in completely random locations. This is important to understand. There are 8 towers around the map, but the configuration they spawn in is entirely random. So, imagine. Start imagining some of these simple ways to get 8 players into 8 towers quickly. What's something we can use as a landmark that has thus far remained static? Well, look right in front of me. We have our buddy Nail. What we use to do that, what we do for this trio is we're going to use Nail as a landmark. And we're going to count clockwise and counterclockwise the number of towers that appear. And we're going to assign numbers to people. And it's basically going to correspond to our quick march trio, priority, but with a little difference. On our quick march, we always have the tanks up at the front. So everything starting from the right, going from the clockwise of Nail. I'm going to take the first one as being the right tank. Everything starting clockwise from Nail, Nepu's going to take the first one. As you can see here, we treat 12 o'clock as the first one going clockwise. So what we'll do here is Nepu will take this 11 o'clock one, and that's his what do you call it? His priority. And we're going to repeat this priority for the remaining 3 members on the side of the map. So you assign 4 people to look clockwise. You assign 4 people to look counterclockwise and nail. Treat 11 o'clock as a start for the counterclockwise. Treat 12 o'clock as a start for the clockwise. And everything plays out just really cleanly. The only thing you need to worry about is the Mega Flare pepperonis here that are happening. You can put them wherever you want, really. The important thing here to do this, to do this cleanly, is you want to be in the middle of the map while these are out. Because as soon as these fade, you want to move into wherever your safe spot is, because there's going to be a Heaven's Fall dropping. You want to get out of the middle. So the Heaven's Fall will drop and knock you into these towers, and as long as you did your priority right, the mechanic solves itself and it's very easy. So Arya's going to die here, as you couldn't hear it in the VOD because I have it very quiet, but again, this kill, I don't know how this ended up being a kill. Vana started lagging here, and everyone was frozen for like 4 seconds. So we didn't get the necessary pre-shielding that you normally would want here. You want to make sure that your team has some pre-shielding going into this. I think Vana does a deploy right out of the going into the Heaven's Fall trio, and I don't think we got that deploy this time. So directly after that set of towers, you need to start preparing for the Heaven's Fall that's happened and the yellow slices, because they're gonna. It's just like turn 9 Heaven's Fall, nothing new here. But while this is happening, there are 3 hypernovas going out. You want to make sure you don't get hit by hypernovas. And at the very end of this, he's going to pick somebody as a fireball marker. And if you remember fireballs from the Titania phase, you want to get in tight and stack and split the damage. Now we do a 7-man split here with a lagging Scholar, so the preparation is not what it needs to be, and unfortunately we're going to lose another player, and we start this snowball effect of mayhem. Yeah, so immediately after that fireball stack, he's going to start channeling Giga Flare just like the other trios. One thing that I guess I should highlight, just because it's popular for some reason, some people do choose to sack the fireball just because the DPS check is pretty light. If you want to do that, knock yourself out. Our team personally does not feel that it's very difficult to handle this fireball. Maybe if you have a Scholar who can't play the game for 5 to 8 seconds, consider sacking the fireball. Oh, and then we also had our Bard res into a bleed here, so we're going to lose another player. Okay, so the Giga Flare goes out, and we're going to enter another series of Tank Busters here. This is going to be 3 Flare Breaths. Okay, and we're now approaching the final trio. This is the 10-strike trio. And this will be a fun trio to talk about, because there's going to be some really fun stuff. I see Fold in the chat, and Fold, I'm going to let you know now. I'm going to reveal the secret technology that Yoshida gave us. I think there are a few teams that are already utilizing the secret technology, but Yoshida has given us the most powerful tool in all of raiding, and I'll get to that in a minute. So we're starting 10-strike trio. Let me outline what's about to happen, first of all. 10-strike trio is, you can see that we still have these Neuralinks in the map. These things are still here for a reason. What's going to happen is Twintani is going to come down and spawn 3 hatches on 3 random players. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Nail is going to be going hog fucking wild with meteor streams. And you'll see Nail just bouncing around the map from player to player to player. So as a warrior, if you're a warrior doing this fight, this is a prime shake it off moment. This is definitely one of the moments where warrior's going to shine and make your scholar's life a bit easier. It's just going to take some pressure off your healers. Great shake it off use right here for these meteor streams that are going to be happening while these hatches are going out. So because the meteor streams are happening, and because we want to also be spreading out to know like where we want to take these hatches to, we're going to fan out in 8 different pre-assigned directions. The Neuralinks are going to target. Oh my god, this is going to be a nightmare to commentate. So we have a pretty unlucky set of hatch spawns here. This just happens. You just have to be smart. We have a hatch spawn on a player up here next to a Neuralink. We have one spawn in between a Neuralink, and then we have another spawn right here in between a close Neuralink. So like, if this was turn 9, what you would do is you would send this player, if say this was like a golem or something in turn 9, you would send this player like straight through here, and they would take this Neuralink right here. But because we have the hatches spawned in the middle, we can't really afford to send players through the middle. So a quick solution to this is we could leave this player in this Neuralink here, shift Sphia over one, and then Fold going to this one. That's probably what should have happened. But then we have this like almost spaghetti ensue where like Fold starts going this way, then Sphia starts giving Fold room, Sai starts going that way to get Fold room. It's like 3 people doing 3 different things, and somehow it all worked out. So they all get in their spots somehow, and the 3 hatches have gone out. You can start looking around the map. You can see Nail start just going hog wild with meteor streams, just going boom, 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 just go not back and forth. The one thing that I should highlight here is the ordering of the meteor streams in terms of rolls is static. It's always going to be the 4 DPS, then the 2 healers, then the 2 tanks, I believe. I hope I'm not crazy. I don't think it starts with the 2 healers. I know that the 2 tanks are last, and I'm fairly certain that it starts with 4 DPS, 2 healer, 2 tank. Now, I said that I was going to reveal secret technology. Yoshida has given us one of the most powerful tools in all of raiding. What's going to happen now is we're going to have the quad shaker. Everyone knew this was coming. Everyone knew that Bahamut Ultimate was going to have a phase with quad Earthshakers. But what we didn't necessarily guess is that the Earthshakers were going to have that Earth vulnerability. And what this basically means, and this is a great time to use paint. This is a fantastic opportunity for paint. Let's do this, guys. Let me just delete this. So the shakers here, you really need to see it to appreciate. Say, let's do this. I'm a little ninja. I'm Fold. Give him his stupid cat ears. I'm a ninja. Oh, we gotta give him the stupid wings too. Give him some daggers. Okay. So I'm a ninja. I've just been targeted by an Earthshaker. Yellow on, that's awful. Let's do gold. Yellow on white. I've just been targeted by an Earthshaker. Here's Bahamut. Let's make Bahamut star. Now, Earthshakers, a lot of people don't know this. The original turn 13 Earthshakers, people might remember that they're 3 hits. It goes 1, 2, 3, and it leaves 3 puddles behind. Now, what surprisingly a lot of people don't know about the original turn 13 is that with each consecutive hit of the Earthshakers, the cone is getting wider and wider and wider. And eventually the final hit of the Earthshakers is a pretty large cone. For Ultimate, what they did, the Earthshakers that they put into Ultimate, they basically took the 3rd hit of the original turn 13 and made that every single Earthshaker. And basically, the size of these Earthshakers is fucking huge. It is damn near 90 degrees. It's something massive like that. I think if I had to guess, it's probably like 80 degrees, but it's close enough to 90 to be fucking massive. So you can kind of imagine, like, let's just assume this is all a shaker. Now, let's assume that you have another, I'm not going to draw 4 players, by the way. So let's assume another shaker was right here, another shaker was right here, another shaker was right here. Let's look at what happens when you do that. Well, because these are so fucking massive, this isn't even doing it justice, honestly. I don't even think there's this much of a safe zone here. Because these shakers are this massive. It's honestly much bigger than this angle that I'm even drawing. Look at this fucking map. You're basically covering the entire map with Earthshakers. So, because there's only 4 players being targeted, you can kind of guess that what's going to happen after these sets of quad shakers is you're going to have, I don't want to spoil it yet. So you're going to have, after these 4 shakers go out, the 4 players that weren't targeted are then going to be targeted by a second set of 4 shakers. So if we go back to our paint, the 4 people who aren't targeted, and again, this is not to scale, you can pretty much assume that the entire map is covered in fucking Earth Shakers right now. Because these shakers are basically covering the entire map, there's no real good safe zone. You maybe can find like a pixel perfect spot on like the side of the map over here or something, but there's a much better way to do it than that. This arrangement of shakers does not work because we can't have the second set of 4 people getting hit by the first set of shakers, because then they'll get vulnerability and they'll die to the second set. So let's. I don't want to race fold. Damn. Hold on. Let me cut fold out here. Okay, let's do that. So imagine the same scenario where we have four shakers, but what we want to do is we want to give the people who aren't a 4 shaker, who aren't the first set of 4 shakers, we want to give them a safe zone. And what we'll do here to do that is we'll have this 1 here. We're going to designate this the first safe zone. And the key to understanding how to do this is to make the connection that there is nothing wrong with putting shakers inside each other as long as it's not close enough to cleave. So you can have a player stand here, a player stand here, a player stand here, and a player stand here. And what'll happen is like this guy's shaker will go this way, this guy's shaker will go this way, this guy's shaker will go this way, and this guy's shaker will go this way. But obviously very crudely drawn, I'm not an artist. You guys can see what's happening here though. Part of the shaker is going inside the other shaker, but it's not enough to clip the next player. So this is essentially the formation that we use to get through this, and it's very safe, very clean, and I highly recommend it to anybody who's just starting this trio. Now, the way you set this up can be a little bit dicey because you can have who gets targeted by the shakers is entirely random, so you can have like all the shakers target people on one side of the map. So you really do need to just kind of make a logical movement of fanning out, because it's happening right after the hatch mechanic that just happened. So get everybody fanned out in this position, and the people who are waiting at the safe zone are doing something very important. And this is what I was alluding to earlier. This is the strongest tool Yoshida has ever given us. So I'm a member of the 4 shakers right now. Look at what everybody's doing over here. They're standing in the first safe zone here, which we have dubbed 1. And what's going to happen is, as soon as these first 4 shakers go out, we're going to move to a second safe zone over here, and these guys over here are going to fan out on their side of the map. So the second safe zone will be opposite the first safe zone. And the easiest way to do that, I wish I was targeted by the second set of shakers. That's annoying. Oh wait, hold on. Was Nepu targeted? Hold on. I have Nepu's video up as a backup, so I might. Nice, Nepu. All right, so let me find. So I have Nepu's VOD up. I'm gonna find 10 Strike from his POV because I want you guys to see. Come on, YouTube. Come on. Load for me. Okay, perfect. So the shakers are going out. Take note of what's happening. Look at the safe zone. The box is the way. So the easiest way to fan out for mechanics like this is to use the most powerful tool in the game, the square marker. Have everyone stand on the corner of a square marker, and then directly fan out, radially from the center. Nepu was on the top right corner, so he goes top right. Boom, mechanic solves itself. The strongest progression tool in the game, square marker. Patented Elysium secrets being leaked. It's not really a secret. A lot of top teams use it. Yeah, very, very easy to execute when you use like a system like that. Okay, so one thing that I guess I highlighted a little bit, but I just want to emphasize, the safe zones that you want to use for this, it's much easier to execute if you alternate the safe zones. Have the first safe zone on one side of the boss, and then have the second safe zone on the second side of the boss, because the players who were in the first safe zone, they can just fan out on the side of the map that they were already on, and then not have to worry about like crossing back through Bahamut. So I thought this was very simple to execute, and it becomes once you get comfortable with it, it becomes one of the easiest trios. Okay, so 5 trios. We did it. We're through 5 trios. Surely we must be done with Bahamut by now, right? What else could he possibly do? Surely we're just going to be able to fight him now, right? Oh, guess not. Grand Octet! Let's talk about Grand Octet. This was the first wall, I think, for a lot of teams. A lot of like the top progression teams. This was a first, if you want to call it a wall. Like people were able to get past it, but they weren't necessarily able to get past it very consistently from the get-go. And I'm going to outline why that was, and maybe how that could have been avoided. And I'll also talk about there's like 4 different ways to get through this. I'm mostly going to focus on the way that we do it because I think it's probably, once you understand everything, the least volatile. However, there are some other strats that, when practiced well enough, are very not volatile as well. But yeah, let's just get through into Grand Octet. So I want you guys to first notice, what the hell? What's this flying in the background? These guys are back. All 5 of the Nail Dragons are back. Wait, and the 3 bosses. Okay, so I'm gonna play through Grand Octet, and then I'll go through what's actually happening. And as soon, okay, I'm gonna pause it right here because I don't want to. There's 2 parts to Octet, and I don't want to get into the second part yet. Let's go back to the very beginning of Octet. Very first set of things that's happening. So, Grand Octet is casting, and the 5 dragons are gonna come down before Bahamut and company fly away and pick a spot. Now the 5 dragons have picked their positions on the map. There's 8 different positions on the map the dragons can spawn in, and the 3 that are left open are going to be where Bahamut, Twintania, and Nail fit in. Now, as you may have saw, if you were paying attention, watching this cycle of events, we're going to have a series of dive bombs coming at us. And the sequence that's going to happen is the 5 Nail Dragons are going to dive at us in a very specific order. Actually, Nail is going to... We actually have a Nail dive bomb. It's the first time we've had a Nail dive bomb in the game. We have a unique dive bomb marker. I'll show you in a second. So we have... Where is it? Boom. So you see this like light green swirly... here's a good picture. This light green marker right here. That's a Nail dive bomb. We haven't had a Nail dive bomb up to this point. And the Nail dive bomb, it's very important to... to make people aware, the Nail dive bomb behaves the same way that the other 2 boss dive bombs work. The position of the dive bomb locks into where the marker appears. So, and that's very important knowledge and necessary to do this mechanic properly. So, the players being targeted by dive bombs, no player can be targeted twice. That's very important. and it's going to go down a list one by one. It can go. It's a random order that's going to go down and target people in, but it can't target players twice. So 8 dragons, 5 dragons, 3 bosses. You can imagine that all 8 players in your party are going to get targeted by something, and each unit around the map is going to target is going to dive at a player's location. So the key to getting through this without doing a wacky strategy is to sort of understand the way that the dive bombs work. You know, with the original turn 9 in the nail phase, it's very easy to diagnose that the dive bombs they go in the order starting from 12 o'clock clockwise, and they go in that order, and they dive at you in a pairs of 2, 1, 2 in the nail phase. Here they're going to be diving one by one, and they're not going to be. It's similar, but it's not the same. Instead of starting from 12 o'clock, what's going to happen is the dragons are going to start diving relative to Bahamut. So you can pretend that where Bahamut spawns is the new 12 o'clock. And the other thing that's different is in the nail phase, it's always the dragons clockwise of 12 that are diving. However, in this phase, it can be clockwise or counterclockwise. It's random which one. Sort of. It's random, however, you can discern which it's going to be. And this, at least to my knowledge, was what gave teams the initial roadblock. We weren't able to, at least in our team and the few teams that I've talked to, we weren't really able to figure out right away how to tell if it was clockwise or counterclockwise. So what a lot of the teams, ours included, was we just developed strategies that sort of accounted for both scenarios and kind of just attempted to brute force it. Develop a strategy that doesn't care whether it's going clockwise or counterclockwise. And what eventually, and the result is it ends up being a pseudo Mario Kart strategy where you're just zooming around the map, dropping dive bombs as you go. And some teams do it better than others. I personally did not care for our Mario Kart strategy, which is why we deviated away from it and just focused on trying to solve the mechanic and trying to figure out how to tell whether it's going clockwise and counterclockwise. So to give you the TLDR and save you like a full day of Prague, what's happening here is that the position that Bahamut spawns in, remember there's 8 spots on the map, so you can have him spawn at the 4 cardinals or the 4, what's the word? It's not a cardinal, oh my god, I'm blanking right now. It's not an anti-cardinal, but you guys know what I mean, the diagonals. He can spawn in one of those positions. If he's on a cardinal, it means that the dive bombs are going to be happening counterclockwise. If he's on a non-cardinal, it means the dive bombs are going to be happening clockwise. And that's basically the information that teams didn't have right away, and what made this phase a lot more complicated than it probably needed to be. And it's such a simple relationship that, you know, we kick ourselves for not seeing it sooner, but it's in the past. So once you have that figured out, though, and I'll go through the way that we do it. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the way that other teams are doing it. The way that we do it is basically going to be identify whether it's going clockwise or counterclockwise, and also the identify where nail is. These are the two keys to starting this phase. You need to identify, doing our strategy at least, you need to identify whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, and then you also need to identify where nail is. Because the first thing in the sequence of events is the nail dive. The nail dive is going to come first, and it's going to come from wherever you were standing. And so you're going to need to get out of there. You're going to want to bait it somewhere and then get out of there. So what I do is I mark for my team. I mark whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, left or right of Bahamut. Remember, Bahamut is the 12 o'clock here, quote unquote. And because Bahamut is on a cardinal, that means it's going to be going counterclockwise. So we're all looking at nail. The nail dive bomb comes out, and nail is going to dive first. We're moving to the side of the map that the dives are going to start happening. These dive bombs are going to be coming out rapid fire. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these markers are coming out fast, and we need to be placing them in the order that the dragons are diving. We're going to be facing them toward Bahamut, Bahamut's side, basically. We're going to want to be sending dragons into dragons that have just dove, rather than sending dragons into dragons that are diving later. That's important for if you're doing this strategy. So I'm counting them out. You won't be able to hear it because I have the VOD muted, but I'm counting them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you've been following along, we've had 6 dives now. We've had 5 dragon dives and the nail dive. So that means 6 players have been chosen. We have 2 bosses remaining that haven't had their dive bombs selected yet. And after a little bit of a pause, the next marker that's going to come out is the Bahamut marker. And the Bahamut marker is going to happen on one of the 2 players remaining. So what we'll do here is we'll send the 2 players who haven't gotten marks yet to the side, and whoever wasn't marked by the Bahamut there, we now know that player is going to be the Twintanya dive. And the Twintanya dive is the most important in all of this. I feel like all of this is leading up to this Twintanya dive, because this is the second half of Octet. I feel is I felt progging at least was much more difficult than this part right here. And there's a few reasons why I felt it was more difficult, and I'll definitely highlight why. So what we'll do here is we're going to again use the most powerful tool in the game, the square. The most powerful tool the Yoshida has ever given us. And I know that I'm going to be the Twintanya dive bomb. Have the other things appeared yet? Let me backtrack real quick, guys. If I look at a good angle, I might switch over to Nepu's VOD because I want you guys to see the timing of this. Okay, this is okay timing. So take a look at the map right now. You can't kind of see it. You can't quite see everything because it's behind my party frames, but there are 4 Mega Flare towers here. I'm like pointing my monitor as if you guys can somehow see me. What am I doing? You have 4 Mega Flare towers on the map right now, and you also have, if you can see, 4 Mega Flare stack markers. So just like Blackfire Trio, you're going to have a situation where the 4 players with Mega Flare stack, and the people who didn't have Mega Flare markers are going to be dealing with towers. But we also have this motherfucker right here. This son of a bitch right here. Hate this thing. So this dumb dragon right here is going to be targeting a player for the 8th and final dive. And we knew it's going to be on me, so I'm in a position that's going to be sending Twintanya off the map. Because what will happen is, if you don't send Twintanya away from these towers, the Twintanya Twister dive is going to shoot into the towers right when you need to be inside them, and you're going to die. So what we do here, I'll outline what our strategy was, is we're going to put the Mega Flare stack marker on the left side of Twintanya, and we'll put the Twintanya bait on the right side of Twintanya. I'll quickly move from my dive bomb bait to the Mega Flare stack, and we use the most powerful tool in the game, the box, because what we need to be doing as soon as this Mega Flare stack marker finishes is we need to be spreading out from this stack because there's fucking twisters. So let's rewind and watch the sequence of events here. I might switch over to Nepu's VOD. I'm gonna switch over to Nepu's VOD after this because I want you guys to see it from his point of view as well. Important to note that the roles being targeted here is the stack markers are always going to be healer, tank, 2 DPS, and the players free for towers are going to be healer, tank, 2 DPS. There are a number of ways to get through this. I'm simply outlining our way. And that's because there are so many ways to get through this. That's why I don't want to spend so much time on the other ways, just because I'll be here for the next 30 minutes on this single phase. So watch this. The Mega Flare stack hits. You can maybe see it up here. This is why I'm going to want to use Nepu's VOD later. You can maybe see it up here, the time in which the Mega Flare towers resolve. So you saw that explosion right there? So directly after the Mega Flare stack, the towers explode, so you need to be inside the towers, but oh my god, at the same time, we're also dropping twisters. So while you're inside the tower, you need to be doing a twister dodge while you're taking your tower. All of this happens at the same time that Twintanya dives you, and it's just a mess. The first time that groups got here, I can speak for ours, I can't speak for theirs, but I imagine that the first time that groups got here, it was a mess for a couple hours, and probably a mess for most of that day, I would imagine. But teams started developing strategies as the day went on that became less and less volatile, and eventually, you know, once you adopt the one true god, the box marker, things become a little bit simpler to manage. Now, I did say I wanted to switch over to Nepu's point of view because I want you guys to see what happens from the tower player's point of view. As soon as my YouTube loads, Spectrum, please. Okay, so the dives are going out. This will be great because you guys got to see what happens when you're not the Twister, when you're not the Twintanya player. I talked earlier about how the towers that spawn are completely random, and that's the most annoying part of this phase. Everything that I've outlined is very manageable. The most annoying part of this phase is the fact that the tower locations are random, because you can't make a very simple priority system like you could with Blackfire Trio. And after hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of losing polls to messed up priorities just because of how much you have to juggle in a span of about 6 seconds, what I realized and what our team realized is the much simpler way of managing the RNG of the towers is to just spread out. We're going to bait Bahamut here. All the dives are out. We know what's going to happen. We know who's the Twintani marker. Just spread out around the map and YOLO. Just start running to towers that look logical. I'm closer to a tower than you. That means this is my tower. Arya is closer to that tower than Nepu. That means this is Arya's tower. Just make logical decisions. A lot of times during Prague, this tier, our team specifically, I think undersold, ourselves. We didn't put enough faith in ourselves to be able to not have to worry so much about having a clean, perfect, omnipotent strategy, and put more faith in us just be able to react to what's on our screen. I think that's very important going forward, that we kind of all understand that we should put a little bit more faith in ourselves, be able to just react. As these mechanics get more and more difficult, and these encounters get more and more difficult in design, this is going to become a more reoccurring theme. And it's going to be important that we put a little bit more trust in ourselves and faith in ourselves to be able to do that. In a game, in other MMOs, it's a little bit easier to do so because they don't necessarily have like the positional update and delay that Final Fantasy sometimes struggles with. So a lot of the times, the reasons that we come up with these strategies to sort of deviate away from YOLO strategies is because oftentimes what's happening on your screen is not what's actually happening in the server. So the YOLO will never be 100% foolproof. However, it is, in my opinion, by far the most successful of all strategies. And that is my opinion, but it is a strong opinion. So Nepu has not been marked by a tower. Perfect. This is great that we have Nepu's POV. Because the one thing that I did want to highlight, while we do a YOLO, it's a bit of a modified YOLO. In order to make it not entirely YOLO, because we know that a tank is going to always be one of the tower players, what we do is we have the tank be the flex. The tank kind of stays behind, lets the 3 knuckleheads fan out and get their towers, and then takes what's ever left. So if Nepu doesn't have a Mega Flare stack, that means he's the flex. If I didn't have a Mega Flare stack, that means that I'm the flex. Nepu's going to wait here. He's going to see the 3 towers that these guys take, and then he's going to fill in. Which is exactly what happens there. And you can see here, the timing for a couple people earlier in chat remarked, and I see my teammates doing the same here. A good timing to start dodging your twister is you can start basically dodging right when your tower is about to disappear. Because you don't want to dodge too far and run back into your twister. You don't want to do a full circle and hit the back end of your twister. That would just be unfortunate. That's never happened to us. No. Okay. Back to the cooler tank. I'm just kidding. Nepu's VOD actually has better quality. I really should be using Nepu's VOD. Maybe I just will. I'm just gonna use Nepu's VOD, guys. Change of plans. Better quality VOD. So what's gonna happen here is we're gonna be entering the Terror Flare phase. So now we have the 5 trios done and the Grand Octet done. And this, okay, so I didn't really highlight it much, and I don't know if I want to yet, but I guess I will. I'll spoil it a little bit. During all of those trios and the final octet, oh yeah, you know what? I should go back. Let's go back to right before octet. Bear with me here, guys. This is important, I think, for the grand scheme of things. So, one thing that we didn't really talk about, I only slightly alluded to it, is the importance of uptime. You guys might remember that of just how spaghetti this. We have a brink, we have a weakness. We've had people die. We had a dragoon die earlier. So we've had 2 weaknesses and a brink, and a tank that is pretty much been all defiance up until this point, just because I wasn't expecting this much spaghetti. So our damage has been pretty lackluster this pool. And that matters. That matters a lot, because just like X-Death, this guy has a hidden percentage that you need to reach. And that magic number is 60. If you do not reach 60% before Grand Octet casts, you will give the final phase of the fight a parameter that makes the fight unclearable. And I'll explain what it is later, because I don't want to spoil too much. But if you do not get Bahamut below 60% before Grand Octet, the fight becomes unclearable. And that's just how it is. And we barely managed, you know, I've said a couple times in this VOD that it's a miracle that this kill actually happened, because we barely managed to make this. We had to blow our LB bar to actually make this push, just because of the amount of deaths we had. And this LB bar right now is sacred. We really need this LB bar for the upcoming phase. We'll see why in a few minutes here. So the fact that we had the Blade Dance here, it's like, oh my god, just another thing that's gone wrong. But with the Blade Dance, we do make it sub 60 before Grand Octet finishes casting. So Pull is alive for now. Now let's get back to the following phase. So as soon as Grand Octet finishes, Bahamut is no longer targetable, and we're going to be entering the second to last phase of the fight, the Terra Flare phase. Now, you guys probably just saw right away what's interesting about this phase. Let me leave it at that volume. Oh, Nail and Twin are back. They're on the map. Oh no, does this think what I mean it means? Does this mean what I think it means? Oh god, they're both targetable. But luckily for us, they're not at full HP, and that makes things a little bit more manageable. We're gonna have the bosses in sort of a council-style mini encounter here, where they're gonna be doing all the mechanics that we've seen from them, but now they're doing them together. And this was a really fun phase to prog. I think it does become one of the easier phases once you get used to it. But definitely, when you first see it, it's like, Jesus Christ, when does the madness end? This was the first point in the fight where I think I went to Twitter and I went, what the fuck is happening? I think this was like, I don't know, people were following some of our Twitters. When you started seeing the what the hell is going, like what the fuck tweets, this is when all this was happening. Because it's just one thing after another. Like, you finally get through Octet, you finally get through all 5 trios, and then you have to deal with more bullshit. We haven't even gotten to kill Bahamut yet. We still have to kill these guys? I thought we were done with these guys. Okay, so I think the simplest way again to go through this is I'm gonna let some of these mechanics play out, and then I'll go back and this VOD's buffering a lot. Okay, so I'll let this play through a little bit, and then I'll go back and highlight what's happening. But follow along here. Oh, let's pause right here. You guys see this? What does that mean? Nail mechanics. So we have all these nail mechanics happening, while we also have Twintania here hanging out. My quality went down because of my internet, but that's okay. This is no longer the good quality VOD. So let's rewind a little bit and talk about what happened. I just wanted to kind of show you guys some of the movement there before we actually dissected what was actually happening. Let's start it like right here. Alright, I'm actually going to go back to my VOD since my VOD was having less of a buffer issue. So at the very beginning of the phase, I put down this A marker, and this A marker is going to be important for our team because this is the A marker we use for our thermionic beams. You're going to be seeing a potential thermionic beams throughout this phase, depending on the Nail RP. So I'm going to be taking Nail. The player who originally had aggro on Bahamut Prime is going to have aggro on these guys, so yeah, just be aware of that. And Nail will default to me, Nepal will take Twintania off me. We're going to prefer to put one boss on each tank. There are actually some strategies that have surfaced that are basically having one tank take both of them, and that's completely fine. I preferred this style just because I liked separating them for certain mechanics. Whenever Nail does a chariot mechanic, I like having Nail off of Twin, just because it's a little bit easier for uptime. It kind of boils down to the same amount of uptime, just because as you move out of the chariot, so too will Twin move with you. However, I just thought it was a little bit more intuitive to just not chariot on top of Twin. So what happened here is the phase will first open up with a set of Raven's Claws and a Plummet. You know, the mini tank busters from these guys. And I will spoil it now for you guys so you can kind of understand why we're going through the phase we are. These two bosses have a Core Hound mechanic to them. You need to kill them at the same time, or the one that doesn't die starts channeling. Oh my god, I can't remember the name of the abilities. I can't remember the name of the abilities for the life of me. If you kill one, the other one's going to start channeling an ability, and it's bad. So you want to be killing them at the same time, basically to avoid that. Now, damage here is fairly important, and you want to be getting a lot of. Thank you, Rios is in chat. White Fury and Twin Fury. So if you kill Nail, Twin will start channeling Twin Fury. If you kill Twintania, Nail will start channeling White Fury. Thank you very much. So cleave here is important because the Core Hound mechanic, Core Hounds being they need to die at the same time. So I'm trying to get as many decimates as I can here, while also not dying. I know that because we're running Summoner Bard, we have a lot of multi-dotting capability with this comp. So I know that I don't need to go super overboard offensively and risk a potential death just from a misteal or something. So I'm going to be playing like half aggressive, and then as soon as like my berserks are over with, I'm going to be playing a bit more defensive. I guess as if for any warriors watching, take full advantage of your berserks in this phase, but outside of your berserks, it's really not necessary to go hog wild. And I do play a bit of Defiance outside of berserks here. Now, I will be playing fairly aggressive here just because you guys remember that going into this phase, we're already behind on damage in the LB. So in the back of my mind right now, I'm thinking we got to push damage, we got to push damage. And I want to backtrack a little bit because I skipped over a mechanic. So I apologize. So we have the mini tank busters come out, and the first thing Twintania does is Liquid Hells. Now, if you guys remember Liquid Hells from Phase 1, what the parameters behind the Liquid Hell is that it's a certain range of players that it targets. You can't be too close and you can't be too far. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our Bard baiting on one side of the map and our White Mage baiting on the other side of the map, because as he's baiting these Liquid Hells, there's going to be 5 of them. If he's baiting them in a straight line, he's eventually going to run out of range of Twintania, and we don't want him running out of range and then just picking a random melee and throwing a Liquid Hell on. So we'll use basically 2 range players, splitting them like 3 and 2 on both sides, because you can't, at least with our Neuralink placement, you can't bank to the middle to continue baiting them, because then you'll cover a Neuralink, and the Neuralinks are becoming very important because of what's about to happen right now. Twintania is casting Generate, which is what spawns the hatches, if you guys remember. Now, our Neuralinks are still here, and you can assume, just like before, 3 Neuralinks, 3 hatches. The hatches will target 3 DPS players, and you'll need to set up a priority that sort of gets your DPS players to the correct Neuralinks. What I can recommend to teams is to use a modified version of whatever your Twintania priority was in Phase 1. Which is essentially what we did here. We had our melees use the same priority they did. The only oddball was if we had 2 range in a melee, we just kind of had to call it out. Like the range will go left or the range will go right, and they'll just be vocal about it. So that's the only thing there. This is very similar to the set of hatches from Twintania's earlier phase, because these are a Twister hatch combo. And the way you'll want to do this, and I didn't highlight this when I was talking about Twin earlier, is you want to handle your Twister before you resolve your hatch. So bait your Twister outside of your Neuralink, do your Twister without getting hit by your orb, and then get inside your Neuralink. So all 8 players do their twister. The Neuralinks the hatches have exploded inside the Neuralinks, and now we're immediately going to go right into the nail RP mechanics. So Nail's doing Gleaming Steel, Take Fire, and Descend. The thing that's about these nail mechanics is they're just like the Fel Ruin trio. It's going to be a set of 3 mechanics. Now there are 4 different arrangements for these mechanics, and they're easy to deal with as long as you're prepared. Now this one is Gleaming Steel, Take Fire, and Descend. So this is going to be a Chariot into Beam into Dive. I hope. Let's see if I understand poetry well enough. So the Chariot just meant get off of Nail. We're hitting Twin while we're off of Nail. We're going to move to A for the Beam. I'm going to shake here. This is prime shake it off real estate right here, by the way. Because the player who is holding Twintania is going to be taking a lot of damage from the Beam and also taking Twintania autos. So prime shake it off real estate. Prime Blackest Night real estate. Blackest Knighting your Twintania tank here is really good. Just words of advice there. Immediately after this Beam, we have the third mechanic, the Dive. So the Dive, if you remember, Dive is a mechanic where you need to spread out. But wait, there's more. At the end of all of these nail mechanics, Twintania does a Twister. So no matter what's happened, you need to be in a position where you can dodge your Twister as soon as the nail mechanics end. So our mechanics are solved, Twister is solved, nobody's dead, nobody's in a wall. Good. Cycle 1 is now ending. The first cycle will end with a Mega Flare, and this is just large AoE damage, just like any other Mega Flare, and it just needs to be mitigated and healed. Immediately after this Mega Flare concludes, we're starting what I call the second cycle, and it's basically going to be a reset of the timeline with a few twists. No pun intended. There's still twisters. And what signifies the beginning of the second cycle is we're going to open with some real tank busters, the Raven's Beak Death Sentence combo. And if do you guys remember Raven's Beak Death Sentence from earlier in the fight? They put vulnerabilities on. That means the Death Sentence player is going to get a slashing debuff, and they can no longer tank Twin. And the Raven's Beak player is going to get a piercing debuff, and they can no longer take Nail. So if you're doing our strategy, it's mandatory tank swap. Actually, if you're doing any strategy, it's a mandatory tank swap. So I am taking the Raven's Beak. I will have a piercing debuff. I will take Twin now. Twin does slashing damage. As far as tanking goes at this part, you do want to have an understanding of the later phase of the fight to really do this phase of the fight efficiently, because you want to be using your defensive mitigation tools in a way that's going to give you them when you need them in the next phase. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but we're basically starting a repeat of the cycle now. So it's going to open up with Liquid Hells, as you guys might remember. The Plummet Raven's Claws are the beginning of the cycle. And we have the 2-3 split here with the ranged and the white mage on the side. You might see it ping pong. Ari actually did a pretty good job of getting... I think he actually got all 5 on one side, so good job to him. We have the hatches repeating now. And if you guys remember, this is a Twister hatch, so we're going to see another set of Twisters here. Bait your Twisters, then move into your Nerlinks. Now, we have again, as soon as these hatches resolve, we have another set of nail mechanics. Now, remember earlier I said that there are 4 combinations of nail mechanics that can happen. 2 of them start with Chariot, and 2 of them start with Dynamo. If the first cycle set of mechanics started with Chariot, it means that the second cycle is going to start with Dynamo. If the first started with Dynamo, it means the second cycle is going to start with Chariot. Now, after a Chariot, it can be one of 2 things. It can either be Chariot into Dive into Beam, or it can be Chariot into Beam into Dive. So this one is, let's see, from Red Moon I descend. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is Dynamo. Chariot was first, so I got a little confused there. Chariot was the set of the first cycle, so that means this one's going to be a Dynamo. So from Red Moon I descend upon burning with the tread. So that means it's Dynamo, then Dive, and then Beam. So after the Dynamo, we need to fan out to, the way we did it is we fanned out to the positions we just came from. We all have pre-assigned positions in this phase, and it's important that for every group that you do have pre-assigned positions going into this phase. We're going to fan out to our pre-assigned positions for this dive. The dive will go out. We're all safe from getting knocked back. And as soon as this dive lands, we all need to be looking at A and converging because we have the thermiotic beam coming and we need to split it. Remember, this is the dangerous part, and this is the part where I was getting maybe a little bit too greedy with pushing damage. Taking a beam without mitigation while being in the Twintanya tank is pretty dangerous. You're going to see me dip real low here and do a panic. You can see me down here. I'm pressing my Defiance because I realize what's about to happen. I realize, oh shit, I don't have anything active right now. I'm in Deliverance. I'm about to take a beam. So I'm like panic pressing Defiance down here. And I get Defiance up, but I mean it doesn't really do much other than just give me peace of mind. So I get topped up nice. It was good healing. I get topped up, and out of this beam we have, remember, the conclusion to this is the Twisters. I missed it actually. Let me rewind a little bit. Directly after this beam finishes, we have the Twister. So again, leaving this converged stack point, we're going to be returning to our assigned positions. We're going to have the 4 ranged players go straight back, and we're going to have the 4 melee players go straight forward, and they're going to be fanning out into their pre-assigned positions. So we'll dodge the Twisters just by fanning out, and it solves itself. These Twisters do stay on the map, so it's important to know, like, don't just be wiggling around because you might actually run into one. Because as soon as this second set of nail mechanics concludes, we're not going to go into a Mega Flare like we did before. We're going to go straight into the set of the true Tank Busters, the Ravenspeak Death Sentence combo. So what this will tell you guys is this is another Force Tank swap. Now after this set of Tank Busters, we're going into Mega Flare. So prepping mid, I have my Reprisal ready, and this is where things got a little dicey for us. Let me let my mouse idle so you can see it. If you guys can see the top left of the screen, you typically want an LB2 or an LB3 to push these guys evenly, because the mechanics that they cast if they're killed unevenly, they can cast pretty fast. So you really want to use the cleanest way of doing it is using an AoE LB to a ranged LB to push them evenly. And typically you want an LB2 or an LB3 to do it. Because of our earlier spaghetti, we're having to use an LB1, so it got a little dicey, a little close. But we fortunately had enough damage to get through it and kill them both at relatively the same time. Woo! Terra Flare is done. We survived. Surely this means it's over, right? Bahamut, come down. Let us beat on you for a little bit. Let's be done. I need water. Okay. Terra Flare's casting. Oh no, we're dead. Let me actually see. So I don't do this. I don't do this part justice. Let's see if Nepu does it justice. Nice, he does. Good job, Nepu. So I want you guys to appreciate this phase transition. This is one of the cooler phase transitions, I feel. Yeah, Rios, we have the same thing with our bard. That happened for us as well once. Both tanks were dead, and they got him down with the LB. So Bahamut was just about to deliver the finishing blow and destroy the whole planet, presumably, but Phoenix comes in and Falcon punches him, and now Bahamut's pissed. Bahamut's mad as fuck. We just killed 2 of his homeboys. So he's gonna go full brute justice tornado and go Super Saiyan. And we have entered the true final phase of the fight, Golden Bahamut. Fully healed, but Phoenix has been kind enough to leave us behind a parting gift in a buff called Phoenix's Blessing that basically gives everyone in the party double damage, and this damage buff is necessary to make the enrage. So we don't get LB3 from the Terra Flare like a person asked. Phoenix is not only giving us the Phoenix's Blessing, Phoenix is also giving us a free LB3. So what's going to happen here I'm gonna let one cycle of mechanics play through, and then I'll rewind and talk about them. Basically, the way the phase is gonna play out is it's gonna be 4 cycles, and it's 4 cycles of the same mechanics. So it's gonna open with a Mornifa, which is a ton of damage, and then it's gonna go into everybody's favorite Akmorn. We've seen this in like 4 different encounters in the game now. And then we have a unique mechanic coming up. We have Exaflare. Now, Exaflare, I said I wouldn't pause. I'm not going to pause. Remember, it's a Search. Exaflare looks a lot like the mechanic Emptiness, if you're familiar with Neo X stuff. And it kind of behaves the same way, but it's a bit more involved than Emptiness. Okay, so Exaflare finishes, and then we go into an Akmorn Mornifa combo, and we get these cycles to repeat. We get Mornifa, Akmorn, Exaflare 2 more times. So let's go back and let's talk about exactly what's happening here. This is not far enough back. Okay, so Bahamut is targetable. He's fully healed. We have a new Phoenix's Blessing buff, and we're gonna be doing some sick openers here. These are the biggest openers you're gonna see until like patch 6.0 probably, maybe 5.0. The first mechanic that he opens with is he's gonna pick a random, what we deem a random target to Mornifa. We tested if it was the closest range player. We tested if it was the farthest range player. We tested if it was a tank. In my eyes, it's a random target Mornifa, but it's irrelevant because what this mechanic requires is you can view it as an 8-man Akmorn. It's an 8-man party soak mechanic. It does somewhere around 420,000. So fun fact about this boss, guys. This boss introduces you to the Stormblood damage cap quite frequently. So to my knowledge, the damage cap in Stormblood is 300k. I believe that's true, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the damage cap in Stormblood is 300,000 damage. And what's funny about this mechanic is this mechanic actually goes beyond 300k if you do the math. It's just that the game can when it hits a player, it's only displaying 300k. To my knowledge, this is how it's behaving. I could be wrong, but when I ran, when myself and Vana checked into the numbers a little bit, it looked like it was more than 300k. But when it hits a player, it's displaying 300k and doing 300k because that's the cap. Hard to wrap your head around that. Might not even be factually true, so I'll just not harp on that anymore. The fact of the matter is, it's doing unlivable damage. Now, if you soak it with 8 players, it becomes very livable damage. And because Mornifa is going to be repeated throughout the phase at a fairly frequent pace, you're going to need a very... a pure stack of 8 players is not enough to live. You need 8 players plus mitigation. And just Adloquium, or just Galvanizes is not enough. So you're going to need an actual cooldown rotation. This was a fun phase to map out. I love phases that force you to map out defensive cooldowns. It really, I'm a big time WoW raider, obviously, and it really makes the WoW raider and me happy because that's a very common occurrence in WoW. And mapping out this phase was pretty fun. So you're going to want to space out your mitigations to make you be able to survive all 5 Mornifas that you're going to encounter. I believe on this Mornifa, this was a combination of Addle, Shake It Off, Reprisal, Soil, and DV. It was a lot. And we could afford to over-mitigate this one just because it didn't negatively affect our other ones very much. So it was okay to sort of like really... You're going to see this one gets way over-mitigated, but a lot of these mitigations are kind of like free because we don't need them until they're back up again anyway. So it's kind of free mitigation here. It's the later ones that become a little bit harder. So we're pretty healthy here. For all intents and purposes, guys, this is pretty healthy Mornifa damage. Let me tell you right now. Directly after Mornifa is Akmorn. Now, I will spoil it for you guys and tell you that there's going to be 4 Akmorns in this phase. And they're going to be spaced out at about... This is not an accurate number, but just to give you an idea, it's about 45 seconds apart. But it's really not. It kind of varies. But just for the sake of ease of explanation, just imagine they're like 40 to 45 seconds apart. In the realm of 40 to 50 seconds apart from each other. Sometimes it's more like 50, but just imagine that's the pacing that's happening. Around the 40 to 50 second mark. Now, because there's 4 Aquamons you have to deal with, Square Enix has given every tank in the game an immunity, and it's going to be, in my opinion, necessary to make use of these immunities in this phase. And I believe when they were designed in this phase, that was their intent. What I personally feel is the best way to go through this, and I will get into the specifics of why. For any people who are bored by tanks, this part might be a little boring for you because it's going to get a little bit tank specific. There are 2 things that are very important about immuning this first Aquamon. When we just rezzed, we all rezzed with everything reset. Our bars and our resources are reset. That means a Paladin's Oath Gauge is entirely reset. When a Paladin has no Oath Gauge, they can't do things like Intervention and Sheltron. We're also coming out of a phase where we've just popped cooldowns to survive some Terraflare tank busters. The nice thing about immuning the first Aquamon is it allows some of your defensive mitigation CDs to be coming off cooldown, still ticking off cooldown, and it also allows your Paladin, if you're running a Paladin, and most teams are running a Paladin, I'm sorry to say, it is a very strong tank right now, it allows your Paladin to be able to build up Oath Gauge. And unless you're doing Shield Oath Holy Spirits, which you really want to avoid because you want to make this Enrage is not entirely free. It's pretty difficult unless you have a strong understanding of the phase. Unless you're doing Shield Oath Holy Spirits, you're not going to come anywhere close to being able to build the required gauge to send out like an Intervention or even an Intervention plus Sheltron on these Aquamorns. So I recommend to anyone doing this fight to immunity the first Aquamorn because in addition to all of that tank benefit that's happening, it's also allowing your healers to take advantage of the big opener. We have a massive opener right now. We have Litany, all the raid buffs out right now, Trick, Stratagem, everything's out right now. So we have this massive raid openers with this double damage Phoenix buff. The modifiers are going insane right now. So it allows your healers to take full advantage of that. And what we'll do here, because we're running Paladin Warrior, is I will home ging the first one. And what I'm going to do is to make sure it's foolproof and there's no possible way I can die, is I will be choosing to stay Defiance till the very end of the Aquamorn and do a very quick Equilibrium to sort of give myself a bit of a buffer for the Tetra to finish the rest of the job. So the Aquamorn, the home gang timing, if you're a warrior, do it at the end of the cast bar so that it catches all 3 hits of Aquamorn. You'll see this play out. This is delaying my opener DPS a little bit, but I felt that it was not only for the safety of Equilibrium, but also just for overall threat purposes. I felt it was an affordable play to make. I'll put it that way. It was affordable. So as soon as the Aquamorn finishes, we're going into X-Flare, and this is where I'm, as a warrior, doing my true opener now. This is my pot IR Berserk. The X-Flare is going to take me a minute to outline because it's not just as simple as emptiness. And I'm going back to paint for this one, guys. So the way X-Flare works is it can spawn in the 8 standard directions, the 8 cardinals and the 4 cardinals and the 4 non-cardinals. And I feel really stupid for not remembering the anti-cardinal term, but I don't want to make an idiot out of myself and try. So they can spawn basically here, 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 here. You get the picture. You guys get it. And the way that X-Flares work is they're going to be spawning in 3 waves. Oh, people intercardinal. Thank you, chat. Chat, you're always there for me. So they can spawn in 6 different locations, and I'm going to draw the locations. Let's assume that it's spawning in this configuration along this tangential line. So they can spawn in 6 different locations. Let's call this 1. Let's call this 2. It's not to scale. Let's do a better job. Let's call this 1. Let's call this 2. This is going to be awful as well. Let me get this right, guys. I promise I'll get it right. This will be good. This is the size. This is 2. This is 3. This might actually be too big now, but we'll deal with it. This is 4. This is 5. And this is 6. So not the greatest, but it's important that I drew them this way because I want you guys to see that they're kind of overlapping. Now, these are the 6 possible spawn locations on this tangential line. Now, they're, like I mentioned, they're going to spawn in waves of 3, and it's going to be a pair each wave. The pairs that come out can spawn to our current understanding of the fight right now, and most people's in chat current understanding of the fight right now. They can spawn in any of these 6 locations. So that means one can spawn here, and one can spawn here. So let's call this 1 and 1. The 1 is signifying that this is wave 1. So these are the exit flares that have spawned on the map first, and that means these are the ones that are going to be traveling across the map first. So these guys are going to be going this way. They're going to do 2 explosions. That's not a true statement. Shortly after this pair of 2 exit flares spawns, a second pair of 2 in the second wave is going to spawn. Now I'm going to pick 2 random spots again, and I'm going to do these. I'm actually not going to make them random because I want to make a point. I'm going to say that these are the pair in the second wave. So I'm going to signify that with a 2. This is wave 2. The reason I'm writing 1s and 2s here is because I want you guys to understand that the exit flares are going to be coming off the map at coming across the map at different times. The 1s are going to go first, and then the 2s. And it's going to be a series of explosions. And I want you guys to watch it play out. Before I continue, watch them come across the map so you can visualize it as I'm drawing it in paint. It's 1, 2, 3. They're just exploding across the map in a sequential pattern. If you get hit by one of these, unless you're a tank, it's a one-shot, and if you are a tank and you somehow manage to survive, you get a damage down, and it is such a severe enough damage down that it's really going to start to hinder your ability to make the enrage. You can do it, it's just really not the greatest. I need a water break. Hold on, guys, sorry. Okay. Okay, so they're coming out at different times, and if you guys notice, I want you guys to see the gap between the explosions. So here's the first set coming. Let me see if I can get a good image of it. Okay, here, this is really hard to see. Okay, you can see the edge of one lane. So this is a lane. This is a wave 1 lane, and this up here, which you can see the outline of, is a wave 2 lane. This spot right here, is a possible but difficult dodge. What you'd want to do is you wait in this guy's lane right here. You wait in the second lane there, and you would dodge into the first lane as the first lane goes by you. But it's a pretty tight dodge, and one that you want to try to avoid unless forced into. And the thing that I'm going to show you guys on paint is a way that presumably does not work for every arrangement of exit flare, but will work for most of them, and it's a way to make the dodges easier. And what that is it all relies on this third wave of exit flares here. Because this is the largest difference between the first wave. So as the first wave has gone out, oh, I know a really good way to draw this. Let me draw it like this, guys, 1 second. Imagine it's like this. This is not a super like accurate representation of the mechanic, but imagine that it's like this. This is gonna be confusing for some, I know, but This is a pretty decent way to explain it. This is like the sequence that people have been the X flares have been coming out in. You can see that like the third wave hasn't really even started yet, and the first and the second waves are on the map. So you have, I'll draw one more arrow here. You have all this time to be idling in this third lane right here, wait for the first lane to pass you, and then move into the first lane. You guys have probably been watching like the stream a lot during the kill and after the kill, and heard me and others talking about 3-to-1 dodges. This is what we're getting at. This is a third. You're idling in a third lane, and you're dodging into a first lane, a first wave, after that first wave has already passed by. And this is the methodology that gives you the most space to dodge, and one that you want to try to replicate as much as possible if you're doing this type of strategy. I'm going to outline a different type of strategy that ignores all of this and is a bit more probably less chaotic, but maybe a little bit tighter to execute strategy. It's essentially what people are calling the Lucrezia strat. I'll outline that at the very end. But let's first talk about what's happening in our VOD, which is this strategy right here. So now that you guys understand the premise of it, let me give you some keys to be able to set this up very simply. I wasn't able to do this right away. This did take a few wipes to be able to perform like very easily on the fly. When you guys are watching me do X Flare, it looks a lot easier than maybe like my initial wipes would show, because I learned some mental checklists that make it very easy. But you guys saw, like, look how much room we had to dodge doing this. The 3-to-1 dodges are so nice if you can get a pattern that allows for them. Look at all this space. There's so much space here. There's so much space here. There's nothing happening here. This is the third lane coming in your screen on the right now. It's like just now passing by you. There was so much time. So what you do here, the easiest way to discern how to find this good lane is you want to look at the first set of arrows, the first wave. You look at this guy right here. Let me use a different marker. So the red lines here, guys, are going to be like your mental checklist. You look at this guy here, and you wait to see, you're looking at him, and then you're waiting to see where the second set of markers spawn. If they spawn on one side adjacent of your first marker, and another side adjacent to your first marker is open, that means that open spot is going to be a third lane, and that means it's going to be a 3-to-1 dodge. So say that the pattern was this, and I saw this mid-fight. My thought process here would be look at 1, find where the 2s spawn, and look left and right of 1. It's a checklist of like 3 things. Look at 1, look at the 2s, look left and right of 1. Once the 2s are out, if there is any spot left or right of 1 that is open, that means it is a 3 lane, and that means that it is going to be a super safe spot, and that's what you want to try to get to if the pattern allows for it. Now we have theoretical patterns here where a 3-to-1 dodge is not going to be possible. The simplest examples of those, and this is not limited to, but the simplest examples of those would be like a 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 pattern of X flares. There's no pattern here where looking left and right of 1 gives you a 3. Similarly, a 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. There's no pattern here where looking left and right of 1 gives you a 3. You can have patterns like I see Rios has one in the chat. This is another one. You can have 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1. You're looking left and right of 1. There's no 3. So these are examples of patterns where this kind of dodge is not going to be possible, and you're just going to have to become proficient. You're either going to have to become proficient at doing the 2-to-1 or the 3-to-2 dodge, which is very doable. However, it requires a bit tighter timing, And essentially what the movement for a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-2 dodge is you want to, as an explosion is moving past you, you want to move into the animation of the top half of the explosion that just passed you. It's key what I just said there. And if you're doing that kind of dodge, remember the words that I just said. Move into the animation, into the top half of that animation. That will allow you to do a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-2 dodge. But if you're a tank tanking Golden, please try to give your melee as many 3-to-1s as possible because it makes life so much easier. I feel like I've outlined X-Flare enough for people to understand the basic premise of it. I'll very quickly outline what is known as what people are dubbing the Lucrezia strat. And what it essentially is, I'm going to leave everything up on the screen right now. What it essentially is, and I'll use, we'll make Lucrezia blue. Lucrezia is blue. What they'll do is they'll find marker number 1, or essentially they can do this with any marker. They'll find a marker convenient. They'll wait for it to explode, and then they'll run into it quickly. They'll move into the animation of its explosion very quickly, so that they move past the next explosion. So like they end up here, and the next explosion happens there. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that my drawings aren't crude enough to where people can kind of follow that movement. It looks very scary when you watch them do it. It is doable. We've done it multiple times. Anytime that we had like a throwaway pull, which is basically where anyone dies to X-Flare because we didn't feel like people were going to make the Enrage. Anger kind of proved us wrong there, I guess, huh? But anytime we had people die to X-Flare, we would kind of practice these like weird X-Flare movements that you never really get to practice. So we would practice this like moving into explosions, and it actually has pretty high success rate. So yeah, if your tank doesn't want to deal with finding 3-to-1s, or if your team doesn't want to deal with potentials for 2-to-1s or 3-to-2s, maybe this is just the way to go. Maybe our team, I think, is going to stick to looking for the 3-to-1s. But if we get annoyed by having too many 2-to-1s or too many 3-to-2s, I could see us in the future adopting the strategy as well. I think that's all I want to say about X-Flare. Again, I hope my drawings aren't crude enough, and I hope that they were logical enough to follow for you guys to sort of understand the mechanic that's happening. I'm going to get back to letting this phase play out. I talked a little bit about how the Akmorns were going to play out in this phase. I want to revisit it real quick because we have Akmorn number 2 happening. We immunityed the first Akmorn with a home gang. That means a lot of our CDs are available for this second Akmorn. We can do what I like to call super CDing. And a super CD is basically where you throw multiple CDs at one mechanic. And historically, Bahamut has loved super cooldown rotations. Bahamut Prime, dating back to 2014, has been about the super cooldowns. And the super cooldowns on the Akmorns. And it's again, nostalgic. So we have everything off cooldown now, but we don't want to overcommit stuff, because if we use our 3-minute cooldowns here, remember, Akmorn is a mechanic where it gets more difficult as it goes on, more difficult in the sense that it adds an extra Akmorn hit with each consecutive Akmorn. So this Akmorn, the previous one did 3, this Akmorn is going to do 4 hits. Now, we're going to throw a ton of cooldowns at this one, and funnily enough, this is going to be the Akmorn that's the most dangerous. Every Akmorn after this is actually going to be a joke by comparison, and that's just because we can't commit our 180-second cooldowns to this one because we want to save those for the 6-hitting Akmorn later. So this one is going to be, from a warrior, for me, this was Thrill, Conva, Rampart. I did not want to commit my Vengeance because the timing of landing a Vengeance on this and landing a Vengeance on the 4th one as well, to me, seemed fairly impossible. When I look at my timings on my spreadsheet, I mapped out the Akmorn timings on a spreadsheet. When I look at the timings on a spreadsheet, mathematically it checked out that I should have been able to pop my Vengeance really early here and have it up for my the final Akmorn of the fight. But the spreadsheet must have been done incorrectly because that never reflected in gameplay. So I just have a feeling that the timings on the spreadsheet are wrong. So I'm going to not highlight that as being a possibility, but if someone can go out there and prove me wrong, then by all means. So for here, I'm going to do Thrill, Conva, Rampart, and I'm going to get what I deem is super necessary here. I'm going to get an intervention from Nepu. And I truly feel like that in order to stay full-time Deliverance, to make this Titan Rage here, both tanks don't want to be messing around with their tank stance. And in order to get through this without Defiance, I really do lean on that intervention to get through this. My co-tank Nepu is going to be sitting in Sword Oath, and I don't believe, even with max uptime, it might be close. I can't remember what he said, but with max uptime, it may or may not be possible to build up 100 Sword Oath gauge by this point. But if you don't have 100 gauge, obviously 100 gauge is ideal. You get the big Sheltron on the big hit, and you get the intervention on your co-tank. Ideal scenario. If you don't, in my opinion, you should really prioritize the intervention over the Sheltron, and this is a good bulwark, I think, from a Paladin. If I were Paladining this, and I think this is what Nepu did, for me this would be Rampart, Bulwark, Conva, and I would also, just because of the RNG of Bulwark, I also would ask for an APOC here, and that's exactly what we did. This is our APOC timing. So if you're running a caster, Aquamorns 2 and Aquamorns 4 are typically going to be your best APOC timings, and really your only good ones in this phase, if you're doing the 1 in 3 immunity. And I personally feel that because of the intervention on me as a warrior, I don't offer... I'm just going to tell people to refresh if you haven't, starting it up again. So, we're talking about Aquamarine 2. We talked about how this gets super cooldown, but you don't want to overcommit your 180s to it because you need to be prepping for Aquamarine 4. And as a warrior, I think this is where the stream cut out. I was going to say that as a warrior, I don't really offer much utility to my co-tank here. So the APOC on Nepu is really going to make up for the fact that I can't intervention him or Blackest Night him. But the intervention on me as a warrior really carries because one issue that warrior does have in this last phase is one of their primary sources of mitigation. Raw Intuition doesn't really do much in this phase. For all intents and purposes, Raw Intuition is nothing more than a Shake It Off buff in this phase. That's just how it is. I don't run awareness in this fight, so I'm personally not comfortable using Raw Intuition against auto attacks because of the amount of movement I'm doing in this. I'm doing in this phase, and one unnecessary crit could lead to my death. So I only used Raw Intuition as a Shake It Off buff, and obviously Raw Intuition does nothing against Stockmorn until they make magic spells parryable in 6.0. So yeah, because Warrior lacks like that one extra button against Akmorn, they do need a little bit of help on this set here. But once you're able to throw Vengeance into the mix, you really start to be safe. Now let's continue on. This is how Akmorn 2 played out, and hopefully it we just had the stream cut out due to some Twitch problems, but hopefully everything got conveyed properly. So immediately after the Akmorn, we're starting to prep for Mornifa. This is the second Mornifa, I believe, of the fight. And this one is something like POA, My Reprisal, a Soil, and I think a Fey Cove, I think I heard. And that's enough to get through it. We have another Exaflare. Me as the tank, what I'm going to be doing right now, I'm doing that mental checklist. I'm looking at 1, I'm looking and identifying 2, then I'm looking left and right of 1. I saw that there was nothing to the left of 1, so I moved left. That's obviously the third lane, and easy done. Now we're preparing for Mornifa number 3. You'll notice that his rotation was not quite static there. It went Akmorn, Morn, Exaflare, Morn. It didn't go Akmorn, Morn, Exaflare, Akmorn, Morn, Mornifa. A lot of Morns, sorry guys. But most, with the exception of that second Exaflare, or with the exception of that first Exaflare, it's always going to go Mornifa into Akmorn. So yeah, we're gonna be preparing for the third Mornifa here, and this will be a Reprisal Soil, Shake It Off, and I want to say Addle. Yeah, I see an Addle in there. Yeah, the third 1, 3, and 5 I think can get Addled. We're gonna be firing off our second LB3 of the phase. A lot of LBs this phase, And what we did there is Nepo and I are preparing for the third Akmorn, and if you remember I said that 1 and 3 are going to be immunityed so that we can be letting our cooldowns tick, come off cooldown in between 2 and 4. And also, I want Nepu to be building Sword Oath gauge. I need him to get up to, I don't need him, but I would like him to get up to 100 gauge before the 4th Akmorn so that he can shelter on intervention. So, we're gonna be doing Hollowed on Akmorn 3 here. You better allow for that, excuse me. Now, we just do an easy Shirk swap there, no tank sense required, just carried by Shirk. And as soon as this Hollowed Ground is over, I'm going to take the boss back. He's going to Shirk me back. And I'm going to be preparing for Exit Flare number 4, I believe? 3? 3. Yeah, 3. Exit Flare number 3. So again, I'm looking at 1. I'm looking left and right of 1. I found one thing I should highlight here is sometimes, guys, the lanes are very small because I tried to do this with my drawing here. These circles actually overlap more than I've drawn here. They overlap quite a bit. They like stretch out like this. It's more like that. Obviously that's a bad circle, but they overlap quite a bit. So they're pretty close to each other, and that means that when you remove one, let's remove like this guy or something. When you remove one, the lane can get pretty small, the safe lane, if there's stuff on the left and right of you. So this is going to be an example of a pretty small lane right here. So this is the 4th Mornifall. This is the second to last Mornifall. And this is just going to be, let's see, this is number 4. So this would be like Divine Veil, Soil Reprisal, and Deploy. I think this is Deploy, Divine Veil, Soil, and Reprisal. Pretty sure. So after this Morn, Mornifall, we're preparing for the final Akmorn of the fight. This is the big 6-hitter. This is what we've been building up to. All these tank cooldowns and tank planning has been building up to this Akmorn right here. And you will see just how much of a joke this Akmorn is. This is the fattest intervention ever. A Troubadour also in that one. You're correct, Rios. Look how little my HP moves. It's like not even moving. This is the power of intervention. The Rampart Sentinel intervention, so strong. So now that you live through that, honestly, Akmorn 4 is like, it's practically as simple as a Hollowed Ground one. It's a joke. So we get a nice 3-to-1 dodge here again. Identify the safe spot, move to the 3rd lane, or move to into the 1st lane. Afterwards, at this point, like once you live that 4th Exit Flare, it's over. Like, it's really hard to die to this Mornifall because you have so many cooldowns still available.
Let's go, come on!
And we have a bunch of nerds yelling at their monitors right now. Put them muted a little bit. So, this is, for our understanding of the fight right now, that Mornifall that was casting right there is the Enrage. There's a weird crackpot theory right now that that's not actually the Enrage and that there's actually an Exit Flare afterwards and you're supposed to Tinkle be that. I don't know if I buy into that at the time of this video. If I'm watching this video 2 months from now and that somehow was true, then I was wrong. But for the purpose of this video, that's an Enraged Mornifall. So the Mornifall, what it does, the Enraged Mornifall, what it does is it starts hitting people one by one. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Just starts taking players out one by one. And yeah, that you just kind of want to have the boss dying at that point. That's definitely the Enrage you tested. Okay, cool. Somebody in the chat is saying that they tested it. So great. I expected that to be the case. And that's the whole fight, guys. I'm trying to think if I missed anything in the Golden Phase. I think I talked about everything. I talked about the Lucre strat even, and maybe that being a viable option if people get tired of doing 2-to-1s and 3-to-2s. I think I think that's probably everything that I want to touch on for this fight. Obviously, this VOD was taking my stream, so you guys are seeing the sub overlay and stuff. I kind of wish I took the sub overlay off when I was streaming, but obviously I really appreciate the subs and the support. So that is a long fight, guys. That was a long explanation, probably one of the longest VODs I've done, maybe. I don't know, I'll have to look at the actual time when we're done. But I really had a lot of fun doing this one. This one people have been asking about for weeks now. Like, are you going to do one for Ultimate? Are you going to do one for Ultimate? You didn't do one for Delta Escape. I've gone on record saying multiple times that Delta Escape was not worth a VOD, and I still echo that. But Ultimate is obviously, you know, it's the ultimate fight. It's one of my favorite sets of progression cycles in the game, in any MMO I've done. And there's no way I wouldn't be doing one of these for this encounter. It's one of my favorite fights in MMO ever, if not maybe my favorite ever. And definitely a fight that I was thrilled to be a part of. You know, some of the beginnings of my hardcore progression days began with Bahamut, and it was really fun to revisit those days and refight him, and also see some familiar faces pop up. So yeah. That is going to be my explanation, review / analysis of Ultimate Unending Coil of Bahamut, and I hope that anyone watching live or watching this on YouTube, I hope that you guys enjoy it and find maybe some of the insight useful to you or your team if you're progging, or just interesting to listen to in general. And that's going to be all. Thanks, guys.